Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Хто води всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Хотите жить – бегите. Хотите жить – сдавайтесь в плен. Россия не получит новую территорию Украины. Россия присоединит себя к той катастрофе, которую она принесла на оккупированную территорию нашей страны. Оккупант заполняет могилами захваченную территорию Украины. И все больше могил на территории самой России. Ценой того, что один человек в России хочет продолжать эту войну, кто хочет войны больше, чем жизнь. Вашей жизни, граждане России.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 594 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today is another very busy news day, to say the least.
And, of course, we're going to be covering the past the past 48 hours of news around the world. This is the first time on this stream that I have had to say that instead of covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine or having a small side note and covering something somewhere else around the world, tonight, for the first time ever, tensions have risen so high around the world in so many places, we will be covering practically a world news segment tonight for the entirety of the stream. Of course, Ukraine is the focal point of the night as usual, and we will always continue to cover the war in Ukraine until the war ends, in support of Ukraine, and always make sure to try and support the folks over there fighting the war, and also support the nonprofits that are helping out in the country as well. But there has been so much going on. We have news from the Koreas, we have news in the Middle East, we have news in Ukraine, and we even have news bulletins that we're going to be speaking of tonight that are in other parts of the world that we did not put down because the map had simply gotten so busy today there was no way for us to really add anything else without just cluttering the map beyond belief. Also, we would like to share with y'all a quick little fact about something we found out today that is shocked us a little bit, and we're going to be giving you all a little bit of a message based off of that. Many of y'all know that we are currently in a bit of a scuffle with a channel called Mercado Media. We have been in that scuffle for quite a while, about a year at this point, and we have been hearing recently that people had found out where we went to university, specifically law school. Today, I went to the assistant dean of our law school because I had heard last night from a tip-off that a group of their viewers from Mercado Media's channel were actually planning to call up our school and tell them that we were planning to paint the school red, if you know what I mean. I don't want to say the exact term on YouTube because I think YouTube might not be too happy about that. So what I did is I contacted the dean, I asked him for an appointment, I explained the situation to them, and they were so blown away that they took us to they took me to the police department on the university's campus. I then explained the situation to them, and the guy asked me, are any of them from Canada? I said, no. He said, well, funnily enough, we just got a call from someone from Canada, and they were talking about you. And so we now know for certain, and we've also been told that that is not the only call that's been placed at our university. They've apparently known about this for some time. They have been calling up our university and trying to harass us even there. We filed a police report today, and we've also contacted the FBI. They are going to be looking into the situation as well, because from what we understand and what the police department there understood, this appears to have moved on just beyond normal internet flim-flam. This has started to move on more into a more serious area. Of course, we are going to continue covering this war and this news the way we've always been covering it. But I want to make sure that to keep y'all apprised in the background of what's been going on, because a lot of people think that this is a bit of a side note to everything going on. And yes, I would agree. So the support for Ukraine is important and is the primary focus of the channel. We work towards the Sunday fundraiser every single week. However, what's happening now isn't anything that really has to do with Ukraine. This is something that has become personal to us and is threatening our very safety and our very lives, from what we can understand. And so, of course, I hope you all understand and stand by us with this kind of stuff. But I'd also like to say, based off of that statement and those comments, I ask that y'all do not engage a single person that is affiliated with the Mercado Media channel or Andrew Mercado personally. They, from here forward, are going to be treated as a dangerous group by this channel, and I suggest and highly encourage, regardless of if they even interact with you, that you do not engage them in return. They have proven that they can be dangerous, and I do not want any of our viewers ending up getting caught up in something that they don't really need to be caught up in, considering that this is something that we've always tried to keep in between us and that person in particular. I don't want our community getting involved in it. And so, with that, we're now going to be moving on into the news tonight, and to be quite honest with y'all, we're going to start off in Korea, move over here into the area of the Middle East and Ukraine, and then we're going to try and figure out largely where in the world we're going to be going from there, because we have never had to cover world news. This is a first on the channel, and so we're going to be moving on into the Koreas, and as many of y'all may have heard, things have been heating up around the world very quickly in many different regions, including the Middle East as well as Ukraine. We are kind of looking into the Koreas because apparently the South Korean government has been tipped off of some sort of a North Korean escalation or buildup along the demilitarized zone within the Korean Peninsula, and are now starting to put their forces on high alert along the demilitarized zone. This is something that is very interesting and very concerning because it's coming at the exact same time that U.S. forces and the U.S. government is starting to largely shift their focus into what we could largely call the middle of the earth nearly, which is Eastern Europe and the Middle East. If you look at that on the map, that is almost what on a flat map would look like the middle of the earth. And so we're just going to call that area the middle of earth or Middle Earth from here forward, since everything's going on over there. Beyond that, of course, places like the Koreas are starting to shift into a periphery. And this article here, which you can go to, you can click on the link in the description below for the day 594 map and go and find one for yourself. Well, actually go find this little link for yourself to this news article. They are speaking in this news article about massive escalations in the area with the North Koreans. They believe that the North Koreans may be attempting something in the future, like a special forces raid, much like we saw in the Blue House a couple of decades ago. And so they have put their forces on high alert, and they are waiting for anything. And while the South Koreans say that the United States appears to be shifting their focus from East Asia and on into the area of the Middle East and Ukraine, and this is putting East Asia into the periphery, that is not entirely the case, as the USS Ronald Reagan, a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier, I believe, and let me make sure I'm correct on that. Oh yeah, hell yeah, that's a Nimitz-class. Has arrived at Busan today, which is one of the large ports in southern South Korea, or South Korea on its very southeastern coast. And it'll be moored there for a short while. According to the article from the USNI News, they said that the aircraft carrier there is for power projection purposes, meaning that this is meant to send a message to the North Koreans, who appear, according to the South Koreans, to possibly be escalating things beyond what it should be. This is something that we think is a good move, considering that the United States is apparently shifting a large amount of its focus onto the Middle East and Eastern Europe almost entirely, and so it is important that the United States still continues to have an armed presence in the area of East Asia to remind countries like North Korea and China that they do not have a free lease on the area while the United States is busy and occupied in the Middle East and Eastern Europe. Beyond that, these are the only...
You know, something I found odd is Kim came out about a day ago and said that there was going to be some major announcement coming out within like a short period of time. Kim has never come out and said anything about what that announcement was going to be. And I saw some intel people speculating that they could be announcing some sort of aggression against South Korea because there's currently a dispute about exercises being held right on the DMZ that South Korea wants to hold there. So I'm not really sure exactly what happened in that announcement. That could explain why the aggression is getting worse all of a sudden.
It could explain it entirely, and it appears that the South Koreans, while they never got the statement from Kim Jong-un and no one did, it does appear that they're still reacting like something is building up. We also understand, due to the North Koreans clearly being inept, militarily, technologically, training-wise, and logistically compared to the South Koreans and the United States military, have a offensive doctrine that will involve the element of surprise. Some people may know this, or some people may not watching this channel, but it's an incredibly interesting fact that has been proven true, is that the North Koreans have spent exuberant amounts of effort tunneling under the demilitarized zone where they can create attack lanes that just start to randomly pop up on the southern side of the DMZ in South Korea. South Korea has actually found 3 of these tunnels before and has destroyed their entrances into South Korea, but it's unknown how many of these tunnels there really are that go into South Korea, and so it's entirely possible that if the North Koreans did want to launch a surprise attack, North Korean forces could just start to pour through undiscovered tunnels, and then that would start to pose a massive issue to the South Korean defenders, as well as the United States military, which is also in South Korea as well, in somewhat smaller numbers. But of course, this is a situation that is always tense inside the Koreas, and it appears that over the past few years, at least the past 2, tensions have consistently begun to rise once again in between North and South Korea, and their positions on Israel are also entirely opposite as well. South Korea has condemned the attacks by Hamas, stating that they were a crime against humanity. North Korea has in fact endorsed Hamas and encourages them to go even further. And this, of course, has once again been putting the North and South Koreans diplomatically at odds with each other, and it appears that this is starting to boil over into something that the South Koreans are taking very seriously. But moving on from the Korean Peninsula, it seems as though a large part of their attentions is coming from the ongoing conflict inside of Israel, in between let me think of their names, the Hamas terrorists, as well as the Hezbollah terrorist organization that is currently based out of southern Lebanon, from what we can understand. The past 48 hours have been very tumultuous and turbulent inside of the nation of Israel, and we have seen some major strategic and military developments within the areas of the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, as well as northern Israel that are showing that this conflict may begin to spill over into a large regional conflict from every single direction in the Middle East. We'll be getting into that in a minute, but Matthew, really quickly, I know you may have just put up that poll, but let's give the viewers an option here in a moment. I'm going to go through some news in the Eastern Mediterranean here and talk about what's going on there, but throw up a poll and ask people, what news segment do you want to come first, Israel or Ukraine? Because we really have about an equal spread of news in both regions today, and I want to know from y'all, what would y'all like put first? Which one would y'all like prioritized, Israel or Ukraine? And we'll cover that news segment first, and then we'll move on to the next one after that. But in the meantime, while that poll is running, hopefully you can get a new one soon, the Western world, NATO in particular, has begun to mobilize their naval forces to start moving towards the area of the Eastern Mediterranean and to prepare for possible intervention if requested by the Israeli government. According to our first bit of news, the USS Gerald R. Ford has been moved into the Eastern Mediterranean. The USS Gerald R. Ford, and let me pull it up really quickly to show y'all, is the newest, latest, and greatest supercarrier in the entire world. It's one of the most advanced as well, and it's something of a pride of the United States Navy. This ship cost approximately $13 billion to build, plus an additional $4.7 billion, so we're looking at around $17 billion put into this single ship. It can carry around 75 aircraft, making it about as powerful as 3 entire U.S. Air Force airfields on land. And not only that, it is nuclear powered, meaning that beyond the food and supply requirements for the crew, the ship can operate at sea indefinitely, meaning that this ship could remain in the area as long as it has a proper logistics connection to land for its crew to, of course, have food and other provisions. This ship can remain at sea in the area for quite some time. The aircraft carrier has been moved into the area with a task force. An aircraft carrier never travels alone. It always travels with a task force, and it is now currently stationed in the Eastern Mediterranean. The location is not going to get much more specific than the Eastern Mediterranean, however. U.S. aircraft carriers largely keep their presence as discreet as possible. Of course, an aircraft carrier
discreet.
Yeah,
that thing's massive. What do you mean discreet?
The thing's like 1,100 feet long, but they try and keep the exact location of the ships somewhat discreet, at least to the public, in publicly available information. Giving out the exact location and coordinates of this aircraft carrier could subject it to too much curiosity from civilian shipping, or possibly attacks from people who would like to see that aircraft carrier damaged and knocked out of combat for a while. However, it is in the Eastern Mediterranean at the time, but we have not heard an exact detail from the Gerald R. Ford explaining what's been going on in the area with it. However, we have gotten some pictures from the USS Gerald R. Ford's Twitter. I didn't know it, but the ship actually has a Twitter separate from everything else for itself. And we got to see some pictures of it underway at sea. We can see one of the, I believe this is one of the ships in the task force, maybe an Arleigh Burke. We can see another picture here of a Navy seaman inside of the control room of one of the ships. We can also see what appears to be the bridge of the aircraft carrier. And then in this last picture here, we can see a helmsman and also another sailor over here on the bridge of the ship once again. Hopefully, the Gerald R. Ford's presence will begin to deter the Hamas terrorists as well as the Hezbollah from continuing attacks on the Israelis. But some additional good news is that we have also seen that the Greek Navy has mobilized to also bolster the American task force that has been deployed to the Eastern Mediterranean at this time. We do not know the exact layout of the Greek ships that have been sent, and according to OSINT Defender, the Greek Navy has reportedly been placed into a heightened state of readiness, with the Greek Hydra-class frigate Psara being deployed alongside standing NATO Maritime Group 2 to the Eastern Mediterranean for operations alongside the USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier and her strike group. The Greek Hydra-class is something I actually have not heard about before, and so let's pull up the Hydra-class frigate, and let's take a look at what it is.
That's that stuff they had in the Marvel movies, isn't it? That Hydra class.
Yeah, that's it. We don't want to talk about that Hydra, but we can see the Hydra class frigate right there. It's a fairly small frigate. This is almost getting into Corvette territory as far as ship tonnage goes and ship size goes. But nevertheless, it is going to be added to the strike group that the Gerald R. Ford is a part of, and hopefully bolstering its security against ships that may be trying to breach the perimeter around the aircraft carrier. When an aircraft carrier is underway at sea, there is actually a perimeter, pretty much an exclusion zone set up around the aircraft carrier in a circle where no civilian ships can enter, because of course beyond that point they could start to pose a threat to the aircraft carrier. We would assume that this would probably be on one of the peripheries, considering it's one of the smaller ships. It'll be on the periphery of that exclusionary zone or leading up to it, so that way you can turn away civilian ships before they even get close to the exclusion zone. Nevertheless, really nice to know that the Greeks are, of course, providing naval assistance to the U.S. strike group, and it's great and incredible to see that so many countries here in the Eastern Mediterranean area are showing their support. However, there is one large country that is not showing their support, and this is one we actually didn't have a bulletin for tonight, and that is Turkey. Turkey has actually come out in official condemnation of the U.S. Involvement in the Eastern Mediterranean and the presence of the Gerald R. Ford strike group. Erdogan today claimed that what the United States was going to do is that they were going to start bombing innocent civilians with the aircraft on the Gerald R. Ford and just end up slaughtering a whole bunch of people. I'm not really sure where Erdogan is coming from. Of course, Turkey does Turkey things. We all know that as a phrase in this channel. But nevertheless, Israel is a Western-aligned country, and their interests are aligned with NATO interests for the most part, although they are not a part of NATO. The idea of Erdogan saying that the Hamas militants are in the right after they've killed about, from what I've heard, the official count now is 900 to 1,000 or even 1,500 Israeli civilians in just 3 days. That's nearly 500 Israeli civilians a day that have been killed by Hamas at this point. It is very interesting to hear them say something like they support Hamas. Because so far in the war in Ukraine, they have been entirely behind Ukraine and supporting them, and we have never even seen this kind of atrocity, this level of slaughter outside of the siege of Mariupol, which was so far back in the war at this point that it may as well have been at the beginning with how long this war has lasted. And Turkey has been behind Ukraine every single step of the way and calling the Russians terrorists for attacking innocent civilians outright. But for some reason,
I don't know. I think Turkey might have been a little bit shaky at some points, because I know they've flip-flopped a lot on Ukraine as well. They've never gone and like blatantly said that Ukraine is bad or anything like that, but they have gotten a little waffly with the support. But one thing with Turkey in this situation is I think they're just probably the biggest fence riders in history, because right now the U.S. is simply sending aircraft carriers to the Middle East to make sure that we have deterrence, to make sure that no other parties want to join this war in Israel. And for Turkey to come out and say that we are planning a massacre of some sort, I'm not sure if they're trying to play the Russian side or what. But that's wild to even come out and suggest that.
It is absolutely wild to come out and say anything like that. And also, I saw in the live chat, and let me see, Kenneth Prosac, hopefully I'm saying that right. He said, "Who said he said that? RT News?" No, actually, I didn't include it tonight because we didn't have the time. But we actually saw a clip of Erdogan saying that today. Matthew, if you can at some point, try and find that and repost it to our Twitter. You can find a link to our description in, a link to our Twitter in the description below, and that'll tell you exactly where you can see this statement from Erdogan. It was translated into English, and that's exactly what he said today. It was almost an entire condemnation of even a U.S. presence in the Eastern Mediterranean with the ongoing situation in Israel. And of course,
and it was reposted on our Twitter page, by the way. It was posted 9 hours ago. It's about 10 posts down on our profile page.
Okay, good. So if y'all want to see that, we may not have time to show it here on the channel, but you can go to the link in the description below to our Twitter page and scroll down to about 9 hours ago and see that Twitter post, and then you'll be able to know exactly what he said with the English translation. But moving on from that, Turkey is doing Turkey things, and to explain something about Turkey, because I see a lot of people saying Turkey is this kind of country or Turkey is that kind of country, and a lot of people are throwing a lot of shade at the Turks right now because of what they're doing. Turkey is actually in a very odd situation historically compared to what Turkey has been since 1921, when Ataturk founded the modern Republic of Turkey as we see it today and created a secularist state. Turkey, for the past 100 years nearly, has been a secularist country, funnily enough. It actually copies the French Constitution heavily, and the French Constitution, much like the U.S. Constitution, has a freedom of religion kind of clause in it as far as the government operates. It can endorse or encourage any religion over the other, but the French Constitution took it a step further than the U.S. one, and actually said you have freedom from religion, meaning that the government cannot have any religious symbology, and individuals inside of the government cannot show any religious symbology whatsoever. It's completely removed, and Turkey's constitution is very much shaped like that. And you'll see this. This is something that a lot of people take out of context as well, because a lot of people don't know how the French Constitution works. Whenever you see in France, for example, someone tries to wear a hijab in the National Assembly, or they wear a rosary, you will see that there is a massive uproar in France, because the wearing of a rosary or the wearing of a hijab are viewed as the same by the French government and the French Constitution. It is an affront to the Constitution of the French government. You can't have religious symbols whatsoever of any kind, or even wear religious clothing inside of the French government. It's completely against the Constitution. It's also similar according to Turkey's Constitution. Now, what's happened recently inside of Turkey, to explain their stance right now, because I kind of want to explain it instead of just throwing Turkey under the bus, making a quick statement. It's a lot more nuanced than a lot of people are giving it credit for. Turkey, over the past 30 years, has had a shift into what could be called a traditionalist mindset, but you can't really call it a radical mindset like you would see, for example, with Hamas or Hezbollah. Over the past 30 years, to try and explain this and get it on along, a lot of rural people began to migrate from really the middle of Anatolia, which is what the peninsula Turkey is on is called, and into the cities such as Istanbul, Ankara, Bursa, and Antalya. And a lot of these people brought with them very traditional mindsets from the rural countryside, but once they arrived in the cities, things were terrible for them. They lived in worse conditions, they lived in slums, they didn't really like it at all, and people were getting very disgruntled with the way things were. And also, it was a massive culture shock to rural Turks to go into the urban Turkish cities like Istanbul, which were very modern and very European-like, and to see what was going on there. And so that's largely what led to Erdogan getting elected, is that a lot of people who moved into these cities kind of shifted the demographics of where the majority of the votes came from, and ended up overpowering cities like Istanbul, which had traditionally voted for secularist figures, and then they picked a traditionalist figure in Erdogan, and he's remained there ever since, due to that demographics change inside of Turkey. And so since then, Turkey has been kind of shifting their role from just being another NATO nation to trying to create their own mini-sphere within a sphere, trying to be a smaller Western sphere within NATO, but also being completely separate from the Western sphere at the same time. It's a really confusing thing. And that's kind of what we see Erdogan doing right now, is trying to keep on that traditionalist mindset. But at the same time, he's allying Turkey with terrorism groups, such as Hezbollah and Hamas. So don't really know where he's coming from on that one. Because while I can see where he would think that would line up with Turkey, Turkey's traditionalist mindset isn't even close to the other mindsets of other more radical groups inside of the Middle East. It's nowhere close at all. So trying to ally Turkey's government with groups like that in the Middle East is just very bizarre from actual historical and political standpoint. And this is one of the few times I'll go into politics, because Turkey's politics are so different than really any other country's politics. There's really no way to make it apply anywhere else. It's just completely unique on its own. So I hope that explains why
I think I might have a feeling what Turkey's doing here, because Turkey has never really come out and blatantly condemned Russia as tough as the West really has. I think they might be trying to ride the fence in the Middle East and really halfway support Israel, sort of halfway support the terrorists, because they're trying to stay in the middle of Russia's graces, I think, because they're not willing to come out and blatantly say that Putin is a killer, he's in the wrong. And they also have helped out Ukraine, but they haven't fully committed to that either. I think Turkey's trying to play the strategic game sort of in a selfish way, so that way they can ride the fence, and whoever comes out on top, they can simply side with them when the wars are over.
I think that's the case. And also, they've been kind of moving towards that direction as well with their military intervention in northern Syria, which still goes on to this day. If you look at a map of the Syrian civil war, there's a decent swath of the northern border area that's about 7 to 10 miles deep in most places that the Turks control and occupy with armed forces. So that's kind of what they've been doing everywhere. And they also fought the Assad regime and the Syrian Democratic Forces, which are the two opposite sides of the Syrian civil war, at the same time to take over these areas. So I don't really know. There's really no way to apply what Turkey is doing to the Russian side, the Iranian side, the Chinese side, or even the American side or the Israeli side. They're doing whatever the hell they do, and there's really no good way to explain it. But I hope that gives you all a little bit of background historically as to what led to Turkey being the way it is right now from about 30 years ago or so. But with that, we are now going to be moving on into our actual news from a country, either Ukraine or Israel. And Matthew, what did the poll show?
All right, so that last poll said, while I pull it back up real quick, it said, what news segment do you want first on our nightly news streams? 50% said Ukraine war news first. 27% said Israeli war news first. 18% said I'm kind of indifferent. And 6% said unsure. So it looks like Ukraine war news is the winner by a majority, or almost a majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would say it's good to know which news I'm going to be covering first. And so we are now going to be moving into Ukraine first, and then we'll be covering Israel second later on in the stream. So if you are here to hear about what's happening in Israel, just hang tight. We'll be going through the Ukraine war news for a little bit, and then we'll be getting on into Israel, which will be the next topic. So just hang tight. I promise y'all we are going to be getting to that news. But in the meantime, if y'all could, make sure to hit the like button. It does help out the channel massively in reaching more people, and also make sure to counter the bots. And y'all know what the bots are made of. It's an interesting hodgepodge. But moving on from that, and into the area of Avdiivka, this is the area that is directly quoted in the title as Russian human waves. We have literally seen human waves used by the Russian army today at Avdiivka. We have not really been able to see if they've made any frontline advances, and it appears that this map just updated while we were going live. And so, over the past 24 hours, it does appear that Ukrainian forces may have withdrawn slightly in the area around Krasnoarivka. We haven't really been able to locate where the human waves are around Avdiivka. We have seen that they're at Avdiivka, but geolocation has proven very unsuccessful in exactly pinpointing where the human wave is. And based off of this Ukrainian retreat near Krasnoarivka, or at least a falling back in a small sort, we could assume that this may be where the human waves are occurring, is once again at Krasnoarivka. And so moving on into our clips, here's the clip of the Russians just doing a human wave. Y'all will not believe it, but they actually just pull up a whole enemy at the gates kind of thing and just charged with about 200, 300 guys through an open field. And we're going to be muting that. But we can see all of them here. Look at that. No formation, no spacing. They just hop out of the APCs and just start crowding up in the field and charging. This is stuff you'd see in World War I. And they have no organization whatsoever right now. And we see one of them walking back to an APC, and of course one of them gets hit and starts brewing up. I can't say it enough. What the hell is wrong with the Russian army? The Russian army, man, they literally sat there and went, our people are untrained. We might not be able to conduct an offensive. They went, it's just a human wave. It worked in World War II. Why not work now? And look how well
I guess this is how Russia solves its commander issue. Their commanders get killed off. They can't replace them, so they figured, well, we don't even need them. Just send in the troops without commanders.
Dude, these guys got upgraded from line infantry to medieval peasants with their fighting style, man. I don't even know what the hell this is. This is just chaos. Just raw chaos. This is like
chaos. Sparta.
No, this isn't like Sparta. Sparta had formations. This is just a bunch of guys standing in a field. Also, now I get your joke. But anyways, moving on from that. That was our video of the human wave. Pretty stupid if you ask me. And then they also tried to push up a completely separate armor column, by the way. Just putting that out there. The infantry pushed through an open field with no cover. And then they sent the armored column at Vodnyane on its own. And then this happened. And I can't say it enough. The Russian army is a joke. Here's the clip. There's a BMP trying to cross a small crossing. It falls over and falls into a ravine. The lead vehicle in the column was just knocked out on its own. And now we can see, look, chaos begins. This guy freaks out and he just starts whipping a 180. So now the rest of the column is in a traffic jam, and this guy's in the traffic jam because he can't go anywhere.
Oh, bliat, panic, bliat. Go off the road, hit the mines, go in the water. He's trying to pick his death right now. He's like, do I want to go left and hit the mine? Man, it might be a little toasty. Do I want to go right and get a little wet? Man, or I can go forward and just crash like the other guy did.
Or I could go forward and crush little guys in APC. Might be a good idea.
Or I can turn around and go back, and then the Russian will kill me.
Dude, and then the Russians in the back of the column are sitting there. Beep, beep, go, idiot, it's green. It's all back there like that. This is about to be chaos. People are about to get in fist fights, and we saw the rest of this clip. But how damn stupid can you get? Well, you can get this stupid. This is about as stupid as I've ever seen. This is dumber. I'm trying to think of something that's dumb. This is dumber than that time that... I can't even think of anything that's stupid. I'm trying to think of something historical that's this stupid. I just can't. This is one of the
like, when those lemmings jumped off the side of that cliff.
Nah. Yeah, that's a stupid thing. It's as stupid as that time that the Disney Corporation, way back in the 30s, tried to make everyone believe that lemmings jumped off of cliffs and killed themselves. It's about that stupid. But
those bastards.
Man, they literally sat there and said, you know what would really sell a movie? Let's just take these small hamster-looking things and throw them in a pond. I bet you that'll sell clips. I mean, dude, Disney was brutal back then with the nature documentaries. And it wasn't even nature, man. That was them just throwing hamsters into a lake. But anyways... Moving on from that into our final clip from Avdiivka, we also saw a Russian Mi-28 active in the area, and this also gives us a lot of evidence that this had to have been a larger Russian counterattack plan today, because the presence of Mi-28s at this point in the war is incredibly rare. They're very expensive. One of the most capable helicopters in the Russian army, of course, next to the Ka-52. And seeing one of these active in the field shows us that the Russians had planned some kind of a larger offensive operation today, but then it just went and fell flat on its face like it would, due to poor training, poor planning, poor logistics, poor everything, including poor Russians. Those Russians ain't got no bank. But we see the Mi-28 right here, flying pretty low through a ravine. We can see it flying past a slag heap. And now we can see it firing a wire-guided missile, maybe an Ataka, but we can't really tell for certain. We can see a second one join in the area. And this is incredibly rare. What y'all are witnessing right here is something we have not seen since about the first month of the war. These two helicopters are in field of sight of probably all Ukrainian forces in the distance, flying well above tree line and firing off wire-guided missiles. This never happens. And this shows y'all this was a larger offensive today, a larger offensive plan. Because for them to put these Mi-28s at risk like this, to fire off some wire-guided missiles at the Ukrainians, that is telling us clear evidence that this was a large offensive today. This just wasn't your normal little skirmish on the front line. No, they were going for it today. It didn't succeed from what we can tell. It did very poorly, and the Russians took incredibly high losses. And now we can see an Mi-17 is even taking up the rear of their formation here. We can see one on the Mi-28s. And oh, dang. Wow, that actually is one of the nicest ones. That is an Mi-28NM, which is the most modern iteration of the Mi-28 that the Russians have available. And you can tell because a normal Mi-28, well, most variants of the Mi-28, except for some of the most latest and greatest variations of it, actually have the small-looking snout kind of a nozzle on the front of the nose cone. We don't see that on this one. It's rounded, which shows us that it's an Mi-28NM.
You said it's a like a NM, like no mo.
yeah, pretty much. No more.
The Russian Mi-28 no mo.
Man, he gonna be no mo once he gets hit by a sand battery in a minute.
Exactly. They're just naming them after their destruction at this point.
Pretty much, Split. I've got to be honest with you. But moving on from Avdiivka, of course, human waves are a thing still, and don't let anyone kid you, because a lot of historians and a lot of people on YouTube have actually started to debunk the movie Enemy at the Gates. And say that, no, the Russians would never do anything like that, charging human waves across an open field towards machine gun emplacements. Why, that would be stupid. No. Go and say, look, here's a video from 2023, and they're doing it now. Why wouldn't they have done it 80 years ago? It seems like they think it's a solid strategy now. So, I'm going to say this, and I know this is going to be a hot take. Because of current evidence from the Russian involvement in the war in Ukraine, we are now going to take Enemy at the Gates as a documentary piece. You can fight me if you want, but that's what we're working off of from this point on. And so, with that, and also Fagelon just said that was an Mi-28N, not an MN. And let me check. Mi-28N. Let me make sure to get a picture of that exact model. He said it was an Mi-28N. And I can't find a picture of it that doesn't have the little snoot. And this is the snoot I'm talking about. It's this little thing right here. You see that nose cone?
Yes.
And let's see, I think this is another one right here. This one, it just says Mi-28, but I also believe this is an Mi-28N as well, because all of them are being marked as that with the boop snoot. But the Mi-28MN, I believe, has a rounded nose. And let's see. Here we go. See how this one actually doesn't have that little snoot? It has the rounded nose on the front. And that's the kind of nose cone that we saw on that Mi-28 in the video. So it does appear that it is an Mi-28NM, which is the most modern iteration of the Mi-28. But at the same time, it is missing that little radar, air-to-ground radar, that is on the top of the propeller blades in the video. So it may be some kind of a hybrid mix of the Mi-28NM and just a normal Mi-28N, or maybe it's an Mi-28N that has the NM nose cone. But nevertheless, I gotta say this, Matthew, when you see this thing with that little nose cone right there, it makes me think that this thing is about to go hover over a tree line and go, I smell enemies.
Yeah, it's about to sniff it. But I'm telling you, man, this thing is getting on the border of looking almost like one of those like Afghani helicopters, like the ones in the Middle East that kind of look a little funky.
Yeah, it kind of is. It kind of is.
At least the front is. That snout part is getting a little funky. It probably still has a good side view.
Well, yeah, it does have a pretty decent. That's what it looks like from the side. Kind of looks like a Chinese Z10 a little bit, but longer. Let me pull one of those up. Now we're going all over the place, but Z10 helicopter, and let me go get that.
And then Rick B just laid it right out there. He said it looks like a rat. Damn.
Oh shit, a rat! But here is a Z10 attack helicopter from China, and now that I said that, I hate to say this, y'all, but I think I've been too harsh on the Russians. The Mi-28 does not look like a Z10. Z10 looks like it was designed by someone who's never seen a helicopter before. This thing's just
this looks like a clunker.
Yeah, this thing looks terrible. It's just a bad look all the way around. Ew.
It's like they went and watched a Mission Impossible movie with Tom Cruise in it, like they like to watch, in China now. And they figured, let's go copy that futuristic-looking helicopter in the movie, but let's make the internals, cheap as hell and just build a shell around it.
Yeah, this is just hideous. I can't even say anything about it. It's terrible. The Mi-28 looks nothing like this. I take that back. But moving on from that small rabbit hole, I hope we addressed that fairly well and got down to the bottom of where in the world that, what kind of Mi-28 that is, because we still really don't know. It could be an M or an NM. It just kind of depends on what you want to think. But moving on from Avdiivka, we're now going to be hopping up into our location unknowns, and we actually have a decent amount of these today to cover. But before we do, I have to say really quickly as a side note, and this is actually a very important side note, that our Sunday fundraiser this Sunday did amazing. Absolutely incredible. Over 2.5 hours of stream time, we raised $8.5 thousand for Friends of the IDF. That was absolutely incredible. Unbelievable, really. I was completely blown away to see that everyone came out in support of Israel so quickly, considering it was just, I think, the second day of fighting there. And I gotta say, that's absolutely amazing from every single one of y'all. I have to thank the Lee Spring Army, not just for helping out Ukraine and standing up for what's right inside of their borders, but also, I have to say, it's absolutely incredible that y'all came to the support of Israel and helped them out as well. I'm sure that the Friends of the IDF is incredibly appreciative of the support that we were able to raise for them, and I'm sure that's going to help them out in giving the soldiers of the Israeli Defense Forces hope. It's unbelievable to think that the Lee Spring Army has started to kind of, well, at least because of that, it looks like it's kind of shifting into not just a pro-Ukraine group, it's kind of a pro-Western world group. And I think that's really incredible, but of course, the primary focus will always and remain on Ukraine until the war is over. That was the promise I made to y'all, I think on the 5th day of the war, which was 589 days ago, and that's the promise I'll stick with. Ukraine will always be the priority until the war ends. But moving on from that, and on into our location unknowns, a lot of y'all have been saying some interesting comments. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so moving into our first poll and question segment, our first poll says, the Israel situation shows no signs of de-escalation, and what is your newest take on that situation? 55% said it's going to become a major war. 21% said it's going to remain limited. 18% said it seems very unpredictable, and 6% said unsure. And I would say, and obviously no politics, but the situation in Israel, at least in the United States views, if I can get my thoughts together, seems to be that it's not going to be de-escalating anytime soon. We're sending a second carrier. The president of the United States came out and made very angry and bold statements about standing behind Israel. And I think if it was to be a situation which we would back off from, or it would de-escalate quickly, I don't think we'd be doing that. So to me, it looks like it might become a major war. Obviously, it's a little early to say that for certain, but with all these different actors wanting to jump into the mix, I wouldn't take that off the table just yet. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, what happened? Reread the line.
It says, the Israel situation shows no signs of de-escalation, and what is your newest take on this?
I would say that my newest take is that this may be leading to larger conflicts around the world, and these next few years, at least based off of what we're seeing around the world right now, may be very tumultuous and difficult times for everyone. I'm hoping that that's not the case. I'm not really one to want to warmonger or look for wars, but it appears that we really kind of have no choice at this point. Either the South Koreans are going to be at war with the North Koreans based off of what they're saying, and they're now on heightened alert. The Taiwanese are scared that the Chinese might invade them. The Israelis just got attacked by Hamas. Russia is attacking Ukraine. All of these wars will appear like they're all going to be defensive wars. And so we really have no choice, at least on the Western end of things. We're largely just defending what's right around the world and, defending innocent lives. So considering that, I would say that it does seem like we're not going to be backing down, and that may be because of that reason. And I think it's not wrong at all in that situation. I think it'd be wrong for the Russians to not back down, or for Hamas to not back down. But for the West to back down, especially in defending innocent people and what's right in the world, I would not agree with that whatsoever. You always have to stand for the right thing. No matter how difficult it is, no matter how dangerous it may be, you always have to do what is right. You never let people bully you into trying to hide or run away or make you fear for your life, and then give them whatever they want so that way you feel like you'll be safe, and then they come back in a while and attack you again. You do not give up. You do not roll over. You don't do that. And that's something that I think the Western world certainly needs to think of in this next few months, is that we need to stop trying to appease these people. They're never going to be happy with anything we do, and we need to make sure to not back down at this point, because if we back down, we are going to lose everything in a split second. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our second poll, it says, do you think North Korea might attack South Korea to capitalize on the chaos in the Middle East? 42% said yes, it's a distinct possibility. 33% said it's possible, but unlikely. 20% said no, that's a real stretch. And 5% said unsure. And I think that announcement that Kim Jong-un was going to come out and make, I think that's still probably going to come out, but for some reason he has taken a little small postponement here before coming out and saying it. Now, we haven't really covered it in depth, but there is some kind of controversy going on that South Korea has started by wanting to hold exercises right back up on the border with North Korea along the DMZ. I'm not sure about the details of that proposal, but that certainly would be a potential provocation that might cause North Korea to act up. And with the chaos going on in the Middle East, this is definitely not good timing for that. So if South Korea is truly trying to push for that, I'll probably hold off unless we're trying to start a world war pretty quickly. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say, I hate to say this over and over again, Matthew, because the live chat's so interesting, but reread the line.
It says, do you think North Korea might attack South Korea to capitalize on the chaos in the Middle East?
I don't really think they would, but it's not out of the question. A lot of people are saying, what are you kidding? The North Koreans would never attack South Korea. But they have, quite recently, actually. Back in 2005, both sides got into a pretty heated artillery battle. And so that's something to think about. That was just in 2005. And not long before that, there was a raid by the North Koreans on the Blue House trying to kill the president of South Korea. I believe that was maybe in the late 80s. So it's not entirely out of the question that something could start to boil up and happen inside the Koreas. It's just that hopefully we wouldn't see it boil over into a full-on Second Korean War. Hopefully it would be something smaller and manageable, like an artillery battle or something similar that just happens for maybe a few days or a few weeks, and then some kind of an agreement is made. But considering what we're seeing now and considering what the South Koreans are saying, it looks like they may even be escalating and heading towards war, at least at the moment. But once again, my thoughts of it actually turning into a conventional war, very slim chances. And so with that, hope that does address that pretty well, and we're on to the next one.
All right, and with that being said, we are fresh out of poll questions, so we're moving on to our super chat questions, and also a big shout out to a longtime channel viewer that did not want us to call them out, but big thanks to you once again for that support, and we do appreciate it very much, and you do know who you are. And moving on to our first one, we have one from Jesus UCSB, longtime channel legend, who puts in a $50 donation. And once again, Jesus, thank you very much, as always, for that support. And he says, LSA, LSA, LSA. Get them likes up to 10,000. And LSA tankers for the LSA.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Jesus. And thank you for being here with us tonight and being one of our Lee Spring Army tankers. I highly encourage everyone, just like Jesus said, to hit the like button. It helps out this channel greatly in being able to reach more people. And if y'all hit the like button, it helps us out a great deal. Right now, our like rate is at 93%, which is absolutely amazing. Probably one of the higher like rates that we've had on a stream in the past month or so. And so if you want to hit that like button, please do, because it does make us very happy to see that folks also enjoy this stream. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Jesus UCSB, and thank you for being a Leaf Spring Army tanker and also being a huge member of the Lee Spring Army. I've got to thank you so much once again because you've been here forever, literally forever, much like many other viewers. And I love to know that so many old guards have stuck thick and thin with this channel and have not doubted our ability to cover the news or our ability to support Ukraine any step of the way. Thanks to y'all and y'all's support in the super chats, we are able to keep this channel running and do this as a job, and are able to focus our efforts on doing this just about 60 hours a week every week on my end, and about another 40 hours a week on Matthew's end. If it wasn't for folks like y'all, this channel would have never existed. This channel has never run on a premise of full monetization. We have run ad-free and sponsor-free live shows ever since the beginning of this war. We have had the option to monetize these live streams and also the option to get sponsors practically since our inception. We've also had the ability to run ads since the inception of our monetization around March 10th of last year. Yet we've decided not to. We've decided instead it would be better for the viewers to support the channel, so that way the deaths of innocent people in countries like Ukraine and Israel wouldn't be sponsored by some company selling a chocolate bar, or, you know, someone selling something to shave your down under regions with. I wasn't really a fan of that idea, still not a fan of that idea, and I gotta thank everyone once again for supporting this channel through Super Chats, because y'all help this channel to remain ad-free and sponsor-free, and you'll also allow us to actually have a spreadsheet of answers to, questions to answer that are just kind of pre-made, and then we could get the live chats after that, because even then, the channel is still free to watch, and you can ask a question, and hopefully we have enough time to be able to get around to them, or hopefully enough people sponsor a live chat that we can get around to pretty much all of them, and then only have, like, none left for the actual live chat segment. But still, thank you so much once again, Jesus UCSB, once again for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the second one.
All right, and our second super chat is going to go to another longtime channel legend. This one is BC Skyman, and he puts in a $50 donation.
Hey!
And he does not put in a comment, but he does throw in one of those nice, lovely YouTube stickers right there. It's the YouTube creature on the firework with it lit. Actually, that could be a rocket, actually. But it's going off into the sky toward the clouds. So, BC, thank you very much for that support, and also, nice firework.
And thank you so much for the support, BC Scam. And of course, throwing in the pear on the rocket. And I gotta thank you so much once again, BC, for helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you have helped to make this thing possible for an incredibly long time. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that further well, and thank you for also being an old guard that is here with us tonight. And so with that, we are on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to be getting into the location unknowns, the rest of the Ukraine war news, and then moving into Israel. So once again, if you're here for Israel and you're wondering, why are we not in Israel, hang tight. We will be getting to that segment here in about maybe 30 minutes or so. And so with that, we are on to the last question of this segment.
And the last one of this segment is going to go to yet another longtime channel legend. This one is Praise Adonai.
No
he puts in
way!
a $50 donation, and Praise Adonai is back. And it's good to see you once again, and we're glad to have you. And Praise Adonai says, Matt, I am proud to be from a state that makes the TACMs and also the Iron Dome missiles, Arkansas. And thanks for covering the Israel situation as well as Ukraine. And I have very good friends in Israel, some of whom who are IDF personnel. And the question here is, will the U.S. stop aid to Ukraine now?
And first off, let me answer the last question by saying most likely not. I can never give an affirmative answer on that because right now we are not giving aid to Ukraine. We did, however, approve an emergency $4.5 billion, I believe, for Israel. So at the moment, it does appear that there are some funds that can shift around even with a government shutdown looming, and also without a Speaker of the House, an actual speaker. We only have an acting speaker right now. It does appear that there was some way to shift funds for Israel. However, we have not seen support for Ukraine. So going off of that, that's the reason why I can't say yes with absolute certainty, but I would assume that we will begin to support Ukraine again. We have to. It's a war that we've been involved in for quite a while. We've already put a large stake in. There are also huge economic interests involved as well right now. Some of the largest investment firms in the United States are already getting involved inside of Ukraine. And so if we start to drop Ukrainian support just on the economical end of things, we'll be sinking a boat that we've already set sail. So going off of that, I would have to say we're probably not going to see that for that reason alone. And let's see. Let me go here real quick. Thank you for covering it. Let's see. And also, I thank you so much for enjoying our coverage of the Israel situation. Some people say it's Israel, and I say Israel. That's because we're from the South. I think Matthew says Israel as well.
Israel.
Oh, he says Israel. So I'll try and say that from now on, because a lot of people have been in our comment section going, "Oh, it's Israel, not Israel, you idiot."
Or you could be like that former U.S. official that says, God bless Israel.
Yeah, it could be that too. But I have to thank you so much, Praise Adonai, for appreciating our coverage. We also have Israeli viewers here on the stream, which is something that really started to make me think. I was like, I don't have a friend in Israel like I did in Ukraine when this war started. To actually,
yeah, we do. Yuri Bench is there.
Well, no, I was about to say that. I was like, but we didn't have anyone that we just knew like in person. Like Yuri Bench is here, and he's of course watching the channel probably right now. So that made me start to think once the war began. I was like, man, that guy is in Tel Aviv, and he could be in serious danger right now. I actually feel quite sorry for the guy, and so I think we should start covering that news entirely and let people know what folks like Yuri Bench are going through right now. And so that's why I decided to start covering this as well. Also, if you have friends in the IDF and you would like for them to try and share their stories with us, I'd be more than happy to share their stories with everyone else on stream if we would have the time. And so if you want, tell them to reach out to us, and we will see about trying to share their stories of what's been going on recently as well, because I think that would be incredibly cool. And so with that, thank you so much once again, Praise Adonai, for the support. And also, I bet you are proud to be from Arkansas. Arkansas is known for many things, like Little Rock. But beyond that, it's a really cool state. We've had a little bit to deal with Arkansas before, not really a lot, but still really cool to know that the ATACMS as well as the Iron Dome systems are produced out of Arkansas. And so with that, thank you so much.
I think they have the administration that lives in Little Rock, and then they make all the weapons in Big Rock.
I think so. I think that is the case.
Yeah.
Oh, man. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, Praise Adonai. And I thank you for being an old guard and also enjoying what we've been doing as far as covering Israel. This next fundraiser, however, I will tell y'all, it will be for Ukraine. But I also have to let y'all know about something that I was not necessarily a big fan of, and it's going to be changing the way we fundraise, well, at least some of the fundraisers we pick from here on. We usually fundraised for Doctors Without Borders and Save the Children. Those are some organizations that we have fundraised for in the past because they've done amazing work in Ukraine. The Doctors Without Borders organization has saved tens of thousands of lives. I think they've done even more than that. And I gotta say, as far as their support in Ukraine goes, it is impeccable. They do an incredible job. And not only that, they still handle a full plate of doing everything else around the world, which is unbelievably impressive from that organization. But when I was going to make the fundraiser for Sunday night, the reason why we picked the FIDF is that we were originally going to pick Doctors Without Borders, but when I looked into what they were doing in Israel, it talked entirely about what they were doing in Palestine and also the Gaza Strip. And their statements about Israel were in huge condemnation of them and in support of any Palestinian group. And it seemed like they were kind of like hinting a little bit towards, maybe supporting the folks that the Israelis are fighting right now. And so seeing that, I started to think, I don't know, we might not fundraise for them again. We might go for Razom entirely as far as medical support and humanitarian support goes for Ukraine, because it's a Ukrainian-based organization, so, they're not down there in, Israel, picking Israel or Palestine, but that was something that was a little bit interesting to me and made me start to think, while they do an amazing work in Ukraine, they've done unbelievable. At the same time, I can't really agree with their stance inside of Israel, especially given the massacre of 1,500 civilians over 3 days. So with that, beyond that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and at least cover why we're going to be having a little bit of a fundraiser change in the future. We always like to be as transparent as possible with y'all about our fundraising decisions and what's going on with that, and so we probably will end up not supporting them again, unless if they change their stance on Palestine, and then we'll start running fundraisers once more. Or at least change their stance where they don't sound like they're being pro other groups, and they're just being, pro civilians being okay, because I can get behind that. But making it sound like the Israeli government is a demon for doing what they do, like right now, especially given what's happened, it doesn't really have a good look. But with that, we're now going to be moving on back into Ukraine and on into the location unknowns. And starting off with our first clip, we got to see some good cooking. And so we're going to be muting that. But we can see the Ukrainians standing around the campfire and singing that campfire song as they throw in some chicken wangs and things, and they start cooking good.
Wait, let him cook.
Wait, let him cook.
Dang, he's flambeing that stuff. He's got that fire up hot on that.
Man, I gotta say, mad respect. And man, they I guess you could say, man, that they ain't chicken because they eating chicken wangs.
That guy had that look on his face too, like, yeah, I think it might be burning a little bit.
He's like, man, it's might be cooking. But with that, I hope that does show that fairly well. And with that, we're going to be moving on to the next one down in largely today's location unknowns. And also, Commander Co, that's what we're going to call you. I do understand that about the Palestinians being different than Hamas. However, the article from Doctors Without Borders, you can go pull it up, just type in Doctors Without Borders Israel, and then they'll pull up Doctors Without Borders Palestine. You can click on the article, and it seems to largely be in condemnation of the Israeli government and kind of acting like other groups, maybe better groups, and we just saw those groups kill innocent civilians in the hundreds, doing what they do. And so, when I saw that, I was like, I don't know. I mean, I can't really back that idea up, because it's not one that I'm a huge fan of, and especially considering that we saw 500 Israelis get killed in the first day alone. I was sitting there thinking, we don't really want to run a fundraiser where the support goes to the Palestinians, who at that time were completely unaffected, and just throw the Israelis to the wind while saying we support Israel. That would make no sense, at least to me on my end, and that's why we're kind of making that decision right now. But you can go look at the article and read it for yourself. Just type in Doctors Without Borders Palestine, and it'll pull up the article from their website, and it'll tell you what they do there and what their stance is. But with that, we're going to be moving on to our next clip, where we got to see the Ukrainians filming a massive crater that was caused from a Russian bomb. Where you see the Ukrainian soldiers around their what appears to be knee-high trenches and showing off a crater from an artillery shell that just landed nearby. And we can see that it almost completely leveled this part of the trench, but luckily no one was in it, so they just kind of wandered back out once it had exploded and just kind of showed off the damage. But with that, that's the end of that clip right there. And I gotta say, I really like that the Ukrainians were okay, and also that crater is a nice feature of the trench. Put a machine gun in that thing, and you're set. Moving on from that, we also got to see the Ukrainians using a new and innovative way of protecting the wounded. And we can see right here that they've made a wagon that they've attached to an ATV, and this guy just kind of sits on top with his weight and keeps this guy on the sled. Is this orthodox? No. Is it working?
Man,
yes.
This is Roll Tide right here. Roll Tide.
Dude, I can hear that, that horn, Matthew. Bam, bam, bam. That one. I can hear that playing right now. Bubba, give me a 9 beer. We figured it out. But
Wait,
hey,
is that a utility trailer? Like that's been converted into something?
Yeah, I think it is. Like they just went and jimmy rigged this whole thing.
Oh my goodness, that is Alabama, but at the same time, it's pretty smart.
Yeah, I gotta say, that is really a smart move. They did a freaking good job figuring this thing out. Like, just trying to figure out some way to get the wounded off the field. And if it works, it works. It doesn't look good, but it does work. And I gotta give them a lot of credit for that. And also having the ingenuity to come up with something much like that. Moving on to our next clip, we also got to see that the Ukrainians captured a cord rifle today. Oh, it's the bullpup looking thing.
Ugh.
Ew. I'm gonna pull this thing up real quick. The cord rifle. The cord. Whoa, no. That's wait. Hang on. The cord M. Let me type that in. Cord M. Yeah, let's see here. Cord M. Large caliber sniper. To enter service. Hang on. I gotta go try and get the exact details. So it is a bullpup. It is in fact a bullpup. I am correct on that. At least. So let me show y'all what this thing would look like with the magazine. It is ugly beyond belief. What the hell is that? Hang on, let me take that. Oh, it's an ad.
We don't want to see what's
it's
next.
A giant ad. It's a huge ad. So here it is. That's what it actually looks like. It has the magazine at the very back, like a bullpup, and it shoots a 12.7 millimeter round. So it's a 50 caliber anti-material rifle, but this thing looks like the modern equivalent of a PTR D41. Let me pull that up.
It looked like it would probably be difficult to shoulder, probably like interfere with how you can hold the gun, like when you're trying to, sight the thing in.
Yeah, it kind of looks like the modern version of this though, which is a PTRS 41 from World War II. This is a semi-automatic version. They had a bolt action, a single shot, which is this right here. It kind of looks like the modern version of this
Successor.
Yeah, successor. Thank you for saying that, Matthew. And look, here's some guys using it.
Wow, they're really what are they doing with it?
bad things. OSHA violations is what they're doing.
That dude's holding like he's trying to walk off with it, but the other guy's like, wait, I gotta shoot something.
Dude, this guy sat there and he thought that once he put his hands on this thing, it was a washing machine. He's about to start booking it. Man, he's like, I'm out of here. And the other guy's, wait, just let me shoot.
Wait, I'm going to the pawn shop with this blade. I forget the mission. wait.
Man, I could get myself some stolichna with this thing. I'm not going to buy it. I'm going to rob it. But anyways, moving on from the PTRS and this cord thing, which is hideous, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of location unknowns, where we got to see in infrared the Ukrainian special forces ambushing a truck. Oh, that actually got marked as something else. We are not showing that now, but it was in infrared, and if y'all want to see it, y'all can click on the link in the description below and check it out there, but we are not going to be showing that on stream. But we will be showing the Russian casualty report for the past 24 hours, and it has been good. 450 Russian soldiers knocked out, 3 armored personnel carriers, 12 supply trucks, 6 tanks, 7 artillery pieces. The counter battery was pretty low today, but, you know, hey, you can't have excellence every day. 17 drones destroyed, 1 anti-aircraft system, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. Way! And so,
let's go!
Love to see it. And now we're going to be moving on from the location unknowns and on into our next clips in the Northeast. Not a lot of frontline movement happened here, so we'll just be showing the clips and giving a little bit of an analysis. But here is some pictures of the Swedish STRVs that have been in service in northeastern Ukraine for a little bit of a while. And I gotta say, these things are pretty nice. Largely a Leopard 2A5, but of course, really neat and Swedish. We love the Swedish stuff. Moving on from that into our next bit of news, near the area of Chernopopivka, we got to see the 45th Artillery hitting some Russian forces in this area. And I can't believe it, Matthew. The cam bots are back. No way!
Man, it's been almost like, what, 7 or 8 months since the cam bots have been here? Man, the cam bots are back? What's going on? I thought we got rid of them.
Dude, it's the return of everything, man. It's the return of anxiety, fear, just everything. But the 45th Artillery is slamming Russian positions, of course, very effectively near Chernopopivka. We can see that they've hit a building here. It's starting to smoke as Russian soldiers begin to run around. And we can see that this cluster munition just hit an ammunition depot, sending it sky high and wiping out all of the Russian forces' ammunition for at least a while. Man, and everyone's like, what? Wait a minute. Adult, saying stuff like that. I was about to say the whole thing, but yeah, that actually happened. Y'all may have not been around for this a while ago, but that used to be a common thing in the live chat on this channel that we would have to take out, like, almost every few minutes or so. That was crazy. I haven't seen that in literally forever. But we see Ukrainian artillery landing near this Russian truck convoy, which just disembarked some troops, and it's hitting pretty accurately so far.
I don't think the cam bot's going to have much success picking anyone up in this channel, but, you know, there are probably other channels I could probably go and pick up a couple of poor souls from.
And I hope that y'all are.
I mean,
you know what I mean. If you know what I mean, man. Like, you know what I'm talking about. But we see the artillery continuing to hit Russian positions, making sure to level them. This appears to be trench works that the artillery is hitting. We can now see them hitting a chain of village houses here and targeting a Russian truck on the street. And we can now see it in normal vision as well, the burning fire from one of the Russian outposts. And we see it continuing
to zoom on in 20 times. Jeez. That's a powerful zoom on that thing.
That's it, man. They caught the Russians smoking, and in 4K nonetheless. But we can see the outpost continuing to burn. And we can see some popping of some ammunition down there. And also, Kolchak, I can't back that up enough. Do not click links from people you don't know. There are a lot of people out there who would love to get your information, and you do not want these people to have any information about you. Believe me, you don't. So don't click on links from anyone anywhere. I have to be honest with y'all, usually when y'all send us links on Twitter DMs, we hardly even click on those because we just want to make sure that nothing bad goes wrong. But we do click on them every once in a while. It's kind of like a lottery.
When we're feeling risky, when we're feeling real risky, we might get frisky and press the link. And oh dear, oh goodness.
I gotta tell you, the batch cooking, and it's cooking good. Cookie. looky, here comes Cookie. But anyways, moving on from that, we're gonna be moving from the 45th Brigade's clip and on behind the lines where we got to see a new way that the Russians load their grads.
Oh my God.
Dude, I'm loving it, man. I'm loving it. I hear the Home Depot sound playing in the background. Look
Oh my gosh.
And they're
I
hardly
can't believe
moving it.
this.
Oh my gosh. Look, they're doing it again. Oh my lord.
Oh my, there's 4 of them involved. Dude, what's
Oh
that
my
guy up there
Lord.
thinking?
Dude, I wish we could play the Home Depot music over this crap because this is just hilarious. But with that, that's the end of that clip, and we're now going to be moving on into our next one, further down the line and into the area of northern Bakhmut. We can see here that the Rasputitsa is starting to set in, and this is actually somewhat bad news. We are always optimists as far as the Ukrainian side goes in the war and always want to say the best things, but it's something that we can't really deny, is that the Rasputitsa is going to put a massive hindrance on Ukrainian offensive operations as well as Russian offensive operations. So here you can see a Ukrainian soldier walking around the area of northern Bakhmut, and the slush is already beginning again. You can see it clumped on his shoes down there, kind of like Alabamian mud, and this is only going to get worse. Vehicles are practically not going to be able to move off paved roads anymore, and so if this starts to set in, I would give it another week and a half, and we're probably going to see all offensive operations on both sides grind to a halt for a while or be completely ineffective. With that, that's the end of that clip showing the Rasputitsa, and moving on from that, we're now going to be moving into the area of Bakhmut where we got to see a drone wiping out a shack. It's kind of like one of those crab shacks on the side of the beach that you get some pretty decent shrimp po' boy in, but instead of it being a crab shack where you get a nice shrimp po' boy, it's just a shack where some sad Russians are, and then the Ukrainians decided to help them out. So you can see it drop inside of the house, blow up, and then the whole entire house collapses like some kind of a Looney Tunes cartoon. Like the entire roof just comes down at the same time, right there. And then the walls just fall out.
Made out of like the sheets of plywood or something, like a movie set.
Dude, as soon as the video ended right here, you heard bam, 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 and then the pig popped up and went, that's all, folks.
And what's up with like the 1950s like style film footage they're using to film this? You notice the little black dots popping around all over the thing?
Yeah, I don't know what is up with this. Look at this. Oh my lord.
The Russians are gonna be like, "Bliat, it was filmed in a studio." It was filmed in the studios.
Dude, this house is literally Wile E. Coyote's Acme pop-up house. Like, you just pull this thing out of a suitcase and just kind of set it up, and then it collapses once he gets hit. I've never seen a house like destroyed like this in the war. This is a first. So y'all were here to see it. A first in-house construction. When it blows up, the walls all fall outwards and the roof just collapsed down right on top of you. I've never seen anything like it. But moving on, Matthew, next thing you know, Matthew, the Ukrainians are going to fool Russian tanks into driving into cliff faces by painting a tunnel on the side of it. That's what they're going to be doing.
And they're also, when one of them points a gun at one of them, they're going to flip the barrel around, and it like faces the person that's holding the gun.
No, they're just going to grab the end,
flip it back around.
They're just going to grab the end of the barrel and just like spin it a little bit, curve it to where it's just facing right back in the Russian's face. Next thing you know, man, the Ukrainians are going to start tunneling around at Russian positions and just pop up behind them out of a hole eating a carrot and go, what's up, orc? That's what they're going to do. Anyways, moving on.
I'll tell you.
Moving on into the next clip. If y'all want to see something really Looney Tunes, this is Looney Tunes. This is a video of a Ukrainian tank somewhere from what we assume is the outskirts of Bakhmut. A Russian soldier is right here, and he's going to fire his RPG at this Ukrainian tank. And to be honest with y'all, he couldn't have a better shot. The turret is facing backwards towards him. It's the weakest part of the turret. It'll punch right through. So he lines up a shot. He fires. And it skims off the side of this telephone pole just enough that it misses the tank. And it just flies right over. And you can see that.
Put us into Popeye context since we're talking about cartoons. Oh, yeah. Come get some, Popeye.
I'm selling. I'm going to go over there. I'm going to get him. What's he saying?
Oh man, I guess that one did him. I have to say a little bit of a diversion. Yeah, whatever. Papa used to say.
Why my arms are so swollen? I need to see a doctor. I need to go to get a surgeon quickly.
It's a tumor. But anyway, we can see the RPG shell skim right over the tank right there. And then the next frame is the tank obliterating the house that that guy's inside of. So I'm assuming that he learned his lesson pretty quickly, that you need to account for the telephone poles before you fire at the tank. Because now this guy, he doesn't have a second chance. And so that's the end of that clip. But a lesson to be learned by all Russians: if you can't use an anti-tank weapon correctly, just don't use it. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that little clip and on into our next one near the area of Klishkivka, where we got to see a picture today of a Russian major, which was captured. This guy right here is it has the call sign Shaitan. That sounds a lot like Satan taking a shat, like, to be honest with you all. That's the stupidest call sign I've ever heard. Nevertheless, he's a major that has been captured. He looks a little dejected here, and I gotta say, I think I know why. He's got a broken arm. You can see it right down there. He's got a cast on. He was captured with a broken arm.
Man, these are Ukrainians on the left and right, correct?
Yes, yeah.
They're taking a selfie with this guy, like, let's take a selfie, smile, and this guy's looking like, oh dear, dude, this is about to go bad.
They sat there and said, "You are going to the prisoner of war camp." This guy went, "Aw," and then they said, "But first, let me take a selfie." And then they took a selfie with the guy.
Oh, come on, man, do it for the gram. Do it for the gram. Okay.
Man, this guy, they said, "Do it for the vine," and this guy sat there, man, and he got that sad expression. He said, "But Vine is dead." And then they took the selfie of him.
Exactly.
Man, they sat there and said, "Were you there when Club Penguin was killed?" And then he said, "No." And then they took the picture. Anyways, we got to move on from that. They captured a major in the area of the southern flank of Bakhmut today. Wonderful to see. And now we're going to be moving on into the southern flank, where we saw near Velika Novosilka some pictures of a Ukrainian Bodana. You can see the Bodanas right here in operation. Very beautiful truck-mounted SPG. Absolutely wonderful. And we can even see one right here that has like a Cossack cab on it, which is actually very rare. Never seen one like that. But really cool. And moving on from that little bit of news and on towards the area of Rabotne, we only have one clip from this area. And for everyone who's been waiting for the Israel news, it is coming around the corner right after this clip. But we got to see today a video that the Ukrainians showed that confirms that the Russians are targeting their decoys, destroying them, and claiming, most likely, that they destroyed an actual tank. But here's the clip. You see them showing off the destroyed wooden decoys here that were set up inside of pits, wasting valuable Russian ammunition to destroy the decoys. Ukrainians are getting a good laugh out of it. I'm getting a good laugh out of it. It's Looney Tunes crap. Like, the war in Ukraine today can be summarized as Looney Tunes stuff come to life. We see them looking around a little bit more, showing some of the remnants of the destroyed decoy that's all over the place. Right there as well, and that's the end of the clip. But really nice to see. It's wonderful, everyone, to see that they destroyed a decoy. Because while it's something Ukrainian that was destroyed, it saved lives, and it's also wasting Russian ammo. Can't get better than that. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on out of Ukraine and down into Israel. And to be honest with y'all, we usually try and make the news segment around an hour and 40 minutes long. This next news segment will probably take about another 20 to 30 minutes. So it will be a bit, but I'm sure all of y'all will like this news and would love to know what's actually going on in Israel, because it is a very serious and currently developing situation that we, of course, are trying to make sure that everyone stays apprised of, because this appears that it's going to start spreading into surrounding regions and nations and become an all-out brawl with really everyone in the Middle East. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the northern area of Israel, probably the quieter part of the conflict so far. Many of y'all may have heard that the Israelis were threatening that if Hezbollah got involved, they would start going to war with Iran. Well, it turns out that yesterday Hezbollah did get involved from the southern border of Lebanon and started to attack Israeli forces along the border. In this first clip here, we can actually see the Hezbollah group hitting an Israeli border checkpoint in northern Israel. This was filmed today. We actually have no clips from yesterday for Israel. Hezbollah did join the war yesterday and started to conduct small attacks, but we only have video clips from today. We can see the Israeli border checkpoint right out in the distance. I'm assuming that this is some kind of a Hezbollah cameraman, and we can see them fire something at the outpost. Can't really tell if it reached or not. It appears that it may have fallen short. Actually, it landed right in the middle of the outpost, exploding dead center. We do not know if there were any IDF casualties in that attack. You see the smoke now dissipating over the compound. We do not know of any additional attacks on the specific border checkpoint, but we can see that one rocket appeared to have landed directly inside of the compound and may have caused some serious damage to the Israeli checkpoint. Moving on from that, we also got a second clip showing an Israeli APC, an M113, being hit by the Hezbollah group today as well. So showing y'all this clip, I don't know what the hell this is, but inner Cyberpunk 2077, but we can see the M113 right there. And they added in a picture snapshot sound. Wow, these Hezbollah guys, they really put in the effort. I mean, impressive. But there it is, an M113. Keep in mind, y'all, a 7.62 can actually punch right through that armor. So it will get hit and destroyed. But I want y'all to keep in mind, this isn't like destroying a Merkava like we saw down in southern Israel near Gaza a few days ago. That was actually a serious ordeal that the Merkavas were destroyed. This, however, just appears to be kind of a run-of-the-mill attack that wiped out a pretty soft-armored APC. You see them giving us a long look at the M113, and now showing us the attack against the APC. We can hear an ATGM fire at it. And we can see it hit the M113. The M113 detonates, practically, most likely hitting the engine bay, and it did. It actually hit dead onto the engine bay hood, knocking out that M113. We did not see any crew activity in the entirety of the video, so we are not able to confirm or deny that there were any Israeli casualties from that M113. It may have been abandoned, or it may have actually had crew inside of it. We're not entirely sure. Moving on to our next clip, we also saw that the Israelis began to respond by firing white phosphorus onto supposed Hezbollah positions on the other side of the border inside of southern Lebanon. We can see a clip of the white phosphorus being used right here. Some people question the use of white phosphorus, I myself being one of them. But this white phosphorus usage is entirely within the rules of war. We can see that it's being used in a non-populated area out in the open farm fields, and so it's posing no direct harm to any civilians. It can only pose harm to the Hezbollah terrorists that are inside of this area. So technically,
that's wild just to see it drop into the ground like that. We usually see it dropping into an urban area.
Yeah, it's actually pretty crazy. The Israelis are actually using this crap according to the rules of war. It's nuts. It's like they're not Russians or something.
Well, what was the point, though? Like, was there a lot of troops down there? Because I don't see it hitting anything.
Well, actually, to put all this into scale real quick, that little glint down there is a car. That's how big a car is. That's how far away that is. So this is just blanketing a massive area in the farm fields and hoping that the Hezbollah militants that are supposedly out there will get toasted by the white phosphorus.
And also, Jim Kalari said, are you sure on that? And yes, it's legal to use white phosphorus on troops, as long as it's used on just troops and not civilians.
Yeah, you can actually still burn troops alive, weirdly enough. You would think that would be against the rules of war. I thought it was, but when you research it, incendiaries are not banned as far as warfare goes. You can... well, let me think about how to explain that. Because it's actually a really complicated rule as far as white phosphorus goes. I think, yeah, you can use it, because I remember at a time we actually thought you couldn't use it. They had to be killed in the actual explosion of the shell of white phosphorus. But then later on we read that, no, that's not the case. You can actually just drop white phosphorus on them as long as it's not in an urban populated area with civilians present. So this is actually completely legal from what we understand, what the Israelis are doing right there. And also... pretty interesting to see that their first method of trying to take out Hezbollah is to just start burning them. Like, they didn't try conventional artillery or anything. They were just like, burn them! It's quick! Shoot white phosphorus at them! But anyways, with that, we're now going to be moving on from that little clip in southern Lebanon, and we're now going to be moving from the northern area of the conflict past Jerusalem. There is currently ongoing fighting in the areas of the suburbs of Jerusalem within the West Bank. Unfortunately, we were not able to get any video or picture evidence of that, and so this area is quiet, video and picture evidence-wise today. However, I can confirm that there is fighting ongoing in the area, but I cannot tell y'all if it's to one success or the other. It appears that right now, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the IDF are all kind of neck and neck right now as far as the fighting is going around Jerusalem. Jerusalem has also been under heavy rocket bombardment the entire time, and the Iron Dome system has been working overtime to stop the rockets and mortars from hitting inside of the Israeli-controlled parts of Jerusalem. Moving on from that, however, and towards the area of Gaza, there has been a lot going on in Gaza today. In particular, the Israeli Air Force has conducted an air war campaign that appears to be hell-bent on just literally leveling the city of Gaza. We cannot confirm. We have heard numbers, but it's very hard to confirm these numbers because they're only coming out from pro-Palestinian sources. So far, Western journalists are not allowed inside of Gaza. It's also too dangerous for them, so they're not going into Gaza. So we don't really have any unbiased reports, but we have heard that there may be some significant civilian casualties within the Gaza Strip, which is very unfortunate. And of course, we always detest the deaths of innocent civilians, regardless of what side they're on. However, it does appear that regardless of what happens, on either side at this point, whether it be against the Israelis or against the Palestinians in Gaza, the West Bank, or wherever, it does appear that civilian casualties are going to be imminent and quite high, most likely on both sides. The nation of Israel and also the Palestinian regions within the area are heavily populated and very dense. The fact of a war going on anywhere in this area in between Hamas and the IDF is inevitably going to lead to civilian casualties. It is incredibly unfortunate, of course, to say that as a realization, but nevertheless, I would rather have y'all prepared to know that there will be many civilian deaths coming down the road than to act like this is going to be a bloodless war as far as civilians go. It is just too populated and too dense in the areas of combat right now, both on the Israeli and the Palestinian side, for civilian casualties to be avoided by either, even if they are actively trying to avoid inflicting civilian casualties. Still, with that being said, we are still going to be supporting the side of Israel, considering that the Hamas terrorists have ended up killing 1,500 Israeli citizens, and we have been able to confirm that number as of today. Moving on from that, and into the area of Gaza Strip, we can see some pictures of the bombing of northwest Gaza. And these bombing campaigns have been going on relentlessly since about 24 to 32 hours ago, just about. We have seen multiple pictures coming out of Gaza showing the destruction that the Israeli Air Force is bringing to the area. We've also seen that Israeli artillery has also been used to shell the port of Gaza. Gaza actually has a port. It's an incredibly small one, and it appears to be used more so for local fishermen than anything. But this is what is believed to possibly help to bring in some of the rockets and mortars that have been fired into Israel so far in the directions of Sderot and Ashkelon. But moving on into the video, we can see a fire burning on one part of the harbor, and we can also see Israeli artillery shells throwing up spurts of water from inside of the harbor. We can see the port continuing to burn. And very interesting to see that the Israelis have gone out of their way to attack the port infrastructure of the Gaza Strip. We believe that this is currently an attempt to try and cut the Hamas and Hezbollah off from further resupplies from boats at sea. Of course, one would be amiss to say that it's entirely possible that they've been smuggling the weapons in from the sea with speedboats that may be coming from a place like Egypt, which is geographically the closest location that could occur from, so it's the most likely. And it appears that the Israelis are trying to cut that out as an option in the future. We've also heard that the Egyptian government has said that they want to send in humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip from Egypt. From what we understand, they are trying to use this little border checkpoint right here. This is the only border crossing that exists in between Egypt and the Gaza Strip. And from what we know, and from what we can tell, this has been closed for about 20 or so years. It is rarely ever opened, if at all. The Israelis actually require that any Egyptian goods coming into the country enter the Kerem Shalom checkpoint just south of the Gaza border, and then drive all the way up through Israel, and then into the northern checkpoint, checkpoint Erez, and then on into the Gaza Strip. The hope in this is that it will go, well, the supplies coming from Egypt will go through 2 Israeli border checkpoints, and through that, the Israelis will hopefully be able to ensure that no weapons are being smuggled inside of Gaza for the Hamas militants to use against them. Apparently that didn't work too well, but we did see that as the Egyptians were trying to move in their support today into the Gaza Strip, the Israelis started to bombard the area with artillery and strike the border crossing to render it completely unusable to the Egyptians and the Palestinians as well. And we can see that clip right here. It appears that there was also a mass group of civilians, Palestinian civilians, that were trying to leave the Gaza Strip that ended up almost getting caught inside of the artillery shelling at the checkpoint. We can see dust being kicked up from the shelling. Of course, pandemonium filling the entire area as people run from the scene and back into the Gaza Strip. Of course, chaos is erupting all over the place. It appears that there's a decent amount of chaos, and everyone's trying to figure out what to do. We can see someone trying to calm the crowd over there. I mean, you see that mostly everyone else is either calm or in an absolute state of delirium because of the artillery shelling at the checkpoint. You see people looking around. It seems like a lot of people are very undecided at the moment and trying to figure out what to do next. And so the crowd is kind of just standing still and trying to process what happened and what to do. But that's the end of that clip, and from what we understand, that shelling has rendered the border crossing in between the Gaza Strip and Egypt completely unusable, and Egyptian aid will most likely not enter the Gaza Strip from the Rafah Crossing Mosque or the Rafah Customs checkpoint in Egypt. Moving on from that, we can now see, because of these clips at the harbor for Gaza, as well as the border checkpoint leading into Egypt, that the Israelis have strategically decided to cut off all entrances to the Gaza Strip from anywhere else except for Israel. Now the only places to enter the Gaza Strip from will be across the border walls from Israel or from checkpoint Erez in the northern area of the Gaza Strip, meaning that the Israelis have absolute control of the area. The Israelis, as of around 24 to 36 hours ago, have also cut off all water, electricity, and also plumbing to the area of the Gaza Strip as well, to deprive the Hamas militants, but also largely the civilian population as well, of any kind of usable facilities and infrastructure that were provided by the Israeli government. And so, at this moment, the Gaza Strip is largely in a state of siege by the Israelis. We also understand that they are currently preparing for a long ground war. According to the Israeli government, Egyptian officials told the Times of Israel that Israel is ready for a months-long ground campaign in Gaza. Israel wants to do a knockout blow to the Hamas administration inside of Gaza. From what we also understand, 300,000 Israeli forces, 300,000 IDF forces, will be amassing along the area of the border and preparing for a push into the Gaza Strip. And so, it appears that the situation is going to be getting very serious here in the future, and also, it's going to be a very difficult one as well. Once again, Gaza is the most populated area in the world by square kilometer or square mile. It is the most populated. There are millions of people living in the Gaza Strip, and it's going to be incredibly difficult to deal with that mass of people and to also try and conduct urban fighting through it as well. Gaza is a massive labyrinth of streets, alleys, and corridors, and every single building on every single street would have to be cleared. It is going to be incredibly difficult. It may not be months long, it may end up being years long. Not only that does not account for the factor that there may be a large amount of civilians that are now stuck inside the country because there is really no way to exit. The border checkpoint was destroyed at Egypt. The port, which was not even capable of transporting civilians, was also damaged and possibly destroyed as well today, so that also adds complications to the matter at the moment. However, the Israeli Air Force is continuing an air war campaign against Hamas inside the Gaza Strip and appear to be striking at any building that is believed to have any kind of Hamas insurgents or Hamas weaponry or Hamas facilities inside of them. We can see that happening right here as an Israeli JDAM hits this building and ends up collapsing the entire structure.
They're like demolition experts.
Yeah, this was actually insane to watch. We now see smoke filling the sky. And also, really quickly, to tell y'all something, there is a special kind of a system that the Israelis use that usually notifies Palestinians of when they're going to bomb a building. And funnily enough, it's called knockers. And I know that many of y'all are going to be making jokes about that here in a minute. But knockers is a system that they drop on top of the roofs of buildings that they're about to bomb 5 minutes in advance, and it makes a knocking sound on the roof, letting everyone know inside that they have 5 minutes to leave the building before the Israelis bomb it. The reason why they do that is because the Israeli Air Force's idea behind the knocker is that it will make sure that any civilians will get out of the building, but it also won't allow for enough time for Hamas militants to pick up their equipment and resources and then move them to another building in time. Some people are saying it's the roof tap. I've heard it called knockers, which, you know, whatever you want to call it, it does really the same thing. And so that is something we actually haven't heard the Israelis using right now. They've actually refused to use the knockers or the, let me make sure, what did you call it? Let's see, dang, where the hell is it?
What?
I'm trying to find the name that folks were actually using. It was another one. And I can't find it.
Roof smackers?
Let's see here. Roof tap. The roof taps. Roof taps or knockers. You know, y'all can. I'm gonna call them knockers because that's what I heard today, and also you can kind of make a little bit of a joke out of that, so it makes it a little bit more light. But the Israelis are currently not using knockers, so from what we understand, there may have actually been civilians inside that building when it was hit. While we are in support of Israel, I always try and report the news as accurately as possible, and that is something that we've been hearing about right now. The Palestinians are actually demanding that the Israelis use the knockers on the buildings, otherwise they're going to start executing hostages. We don't know if the Israelis have started using those systems at the moment. From what we understand right now, they are still just striking buildings that they believe have Hamas equipment inside of them.
Am I hearing music or is that a imagination?
That sounds like calls from a minaret. Yeah, that sounds like a call from a minaret at a mosque. And then we can see another JDAM hit the building that was in the center, taking it down as well. We now hear some people behind the camera moving around as the smoke starts billowing from that building as well, and that's the end of the clip. But once again, showing the part of the bombing campaign that's being conducted against the Palestinians inside of the Gaza Strip. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also saw that the Hamas militants continued to fire a mass barrage of rockets towards Ashkelon in the middle of the day today. It appears, from what we understand, that the Hamas militants are incredibly well equipped inside of the Gaza Strip. They apparently have, from what we can understand, almost an unlimited number of rockets. We have not seen them expend their rocket stores yet, and it's the third day. They fired off, I think, at this count, roughly 9,000 missiles and mortars at this point from the Gaza Strip, and they still have not run out. We can see those rockets firing right here. These rockets were also fired directly from the northern suburbs of Gaza and towards the Israeli city of Ashkelon, just a few miles away. The Iron Dome at Ashkelon immediately responded as soon as these rockets began to enter the airspace and started to save the lives of the people who were inside of Ashkelon, who were about to be the unfortunate victims of Hamas rockets. We can see the Iron Dome working in broad daylight right here. The little puffs of smoke that you're seeing in the sky are the missiles being intercepted, or the rockets being intercepted by the Iron Dome missiles. The Iron Dome missile system does not set up some kind of an invisible shield or a dome over a city. It's more so of a figurative protective dome created around the city that's protected with the missiles fired by the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome's missiles are small enough and specialized to go directly after small unguided rockets and mortars, and we can see that the sky is filled with Iron Dome missiles that are going after almost every single rocket that is airborne right now over the city of Ashkelon. We can clearly also tell that there are two Iron Dome missile launchers, and this tells us that there has been an entire battery located in the area of Ashkelon. That's the end of the clip, but you cannot deny the accuracy and also the nimbleness of Iron Dome missiles. Probably some of the most nimble missiles seen in the world in action commonly. And they're also fairly cheap as well. I think they're only about $100,000 to $150,000. And while it doesn't seem cheap to you and me, on a military scale, for this kind of effectiveness and also maneuverability in a missile, which requires a high amount of technical expertise to even produce, it is a bulk, cheap price to have these kinds of missile systems to protect the nation of Israel, like we're seeing right here. Moving on from that, however, it does appear that Hamas rocket barrage proved to be almost entirely unsuccessful. However, we did see that while the Israelis are certainly trying to put a handle on the situation and push the Hamas back into the Gaza Strip, 2 women did get caught up in a firefight today just south of the town of Ashkelon, in between the Hamas militants and then the IDF, which rolled in just a few minutes later. Here in this clip, we could see a woman at some kind of a border checkpoint. We can now see her running over here into the corner, opening up the door, and then running. These are the Hamas militants. And we can now see them coming out of the car, and we can see them moving around and spreading out for a bit. We can see one of them, apparently the squad leader of this group, or the fire team leader, apparently issuing orders. We see another guy over here trying to spread some folks out. We now see them moving along. It appears that their weapons are almost entirely AKMs, or some kind of an AK-47 style rifle. When you see them trying to get through the gate, they did get through the gate. And we now see a group of people moving down the highway out here. And I believe, if I'm correct, that is the Israeli Defense Forces that are moving into the area. And also, someone says, is that a Ford? No, it's a Nissan, or a Nissan. If you're from Britain, it's a Nissan. But we can see
the white truck?
Yeah, the white truck right here. That's a Toyota.
That's actually a Toyota.
Oh my god, I'm an idiot. It's a Toyota. I'm sorry, everyone. I don't know why I said it's a Nissan. It's obviously not a Nissan or a Nissan. It's a Toyota. The Hamas militants have disappeared off screen at the time. And we can see that this is certainly the Israeli Defense Forces. We can see one of the women running out with a torn shirt, and it clearly, well, actually, y'all, I can't even really hide what was about to happen right there. These women are running away from the Hamas because the Hamas weren't going to kill them; they were going to abuse them, and of course, in ways that I can't even describe on the show. You can see that their shirts are torn, and they're trying to stop the Hamas. We can see them waving towards the IDF in the distance to help them out, and also let them know that the Hamas is right here. And we can see that this guy was going for this woman right here and was probably going to try and pin her down and do whatever. But then he immediately sees the IDF out there and the women go hiding behind the car. A firefight then ensues in between the IDF and the Hamas. The Hamas hunkering behind one side of the car, the women hunkering down on the other side. We see the Hamas
I'd recommend stopping the video.
We'll say what?
I'd recommend stopping the video. This is getting very risky to show.
Well, 1 second. I'm going to review it real quick just to make sure. And let me check. Actually, it's actually completely safe to show, funnily enough. So we're going to put this back up on screen. I had to put it up for a quick review, though. We see the IDF firing back at the Hamas soldier. We see him getting ready to fire back at the IDF. See him firing over the car. The women are still hiding behind one side of the car. Suffice it to say, this part of the clip was cut out, actually, before we even saw it. But the Hamas militants were dispatched, and then the rest ran away. It was a hit and run, largely, by the Hamas. They abandoned the Toyota that they came in, and we can see the women still hiding behind the car. It appears that she's trying to move some stuff around in the trunk, and in a minute she'll drop the cooler out of the back of the car, and that's why you'll see this liquid slick on the ground. It's not oil or gas from the car, it's actually ice or some kind of water from the cooler. We can see them still fiddling around, popping open the trunk even further, trying to mess around with stuff in the trunk. The IDF will be up here in a moment, though. They'll come up and actually tell them to just run away from the area because it's not safe there. And also, Drunk Monkey said these girls must have been just crapping themselves. I think anyone would have crapped themselves in that situation. I would have, because think about it: you're getting caught in the crossfire of terrorists and also the armed forces. That's got to be scary as hell because the amount of fire being thrown at each other has to be huge. But we can finally see the IDF arriving at the cars. And we can see that this is a very impromptu, quick reaction force that the Israelis had created right here. This guy doesn't even have a helmet on, and it appears that few of them do, actually. So this is a very quick put together group. We can see that this woman soldier right here only has a pistol, and the other soldier only has a pistol as well. This is the only guy in the group to have any kind of a rifle, and we can now see the women running off. The soldiers just told them to get the hell out of there because they can't really help them out right now, and the three-man group is now moving on. It appears that he also took a rifle and threw it into the bushes there. I think that may have been left behind by Hamas. But with that, that's the end of the clip and showing one of the insane firefights. And by the way, this actually happened on Saturday. It was one of the first things that happened, but we got the video footage today, and we showed it to y'all. Moving on from that,
the three-man group's got to be pretty effective because they scared off a whole bunch of those terrorists. So they must have been pretty good.
And also shows you how cowardice the Hamas is. They'll go after unarmed people, but once a small amount of resistance shows up, they go running for the hills. That's how cowardly they are. They're not there to actually try and destroy the Israeli government or the Israeli army. They're more so there to just wreak havoc and kill as many innocent people as they can. And that's clear proof of it right there with how they reacted to that. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also saw the Iron Dome intercepting more rockets somewhere outside of Ashkelon. This is somewhere in between Ashkelon and Sderot. But here's the clip. We can see the camera panning around as we watch the Iron Dome in the distance over the city, intercepting more Hamas rockets outside of Gaza. We see more rockets continuing to be intercepted. It's more interesting, honestly, to watch the Iron Dome system at work at night because it's much easier to track where all of the missiles are and to see how it really works. We see people moving around on the rooftops and continuing to film as we watch more Iron Dome missiles fire to intercept incoming missiles. This appears to have been a smaller barrage compared to what we saw in broad daylight over Ashkelon because the Iron Dome is working at a fairly slow pace in this clip. But moving on from that and the small probing rocket attack that the Hamas fired just a few hours ago, we're now going to be moving on from the Gaza news and also the Israel news in general because that's all the video clips we have. At the moment, the war is a very fluid one in between Hamas and Israel. The Hamas are still being pushed back into the Gaza Strip right now. Israeli soldiers are starting to move in mass to the area of the Gaza Strip, as well as Jerusalem at the West Bank, and also in the northern area of Israel along the Lebanese border. From what we understand at the moment, the Israeli Air Force is the one largely conducting the campaigns that are being wrought against the Hamas and Hezbollah terrorist groups. We have not seen the Israeli Defense Forces conduct an actual ground campaign yet, and that will probably take days, if not weeks, for the Israeli Defense Forces to prepare for. Until then, we will probably see largely Air Force activities, small skirmishes, and also maybe armored engagements here and there with Israel's Merkavas, which are also being moved into the area as of this moment. But beyond that, that is all of the news that we had from Israel today and the ongoing conflict there. And now it's time for us to move up to Kyiv, because while we just got off of the Israel news, this is still a Ukraine war news channel through and through, and so we are going to be moving on into Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on the 594th day of the war in Ukraine. We are only 6 days away from celebrating the 600th day of the Ukrainian war. The Ukrainians have done incredibly well to survive 600 days, and they'll survive 600 more if they need to, and we have absolute faith and trust that the Ukrainian government will ensure to protect its people, much like Israel is as well. And so, without further ado, here is the speech.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці, українки. Дуже якісний візит в Румунію, плідний. Зустрічі з президентом Йоганнісом, головами палат румунського парламенту, з депутатами, прем'єр-міністром Румунії. Що досягнуто? Перше. Є хороші домовленості щодо зброї. Я не можу зараз розкривати усього, але снаряди плюс, посилення ППО плюс, деякі речі ще готові. Вони будуть потужними. В Румунії створюється центр підготовки пілотів для F-16, і українські пілоти будуть серед перших, хто навчатиметься. Друге. Зафіксували, що переходимо на рівень стратегічного партнерства. За цим політичним формулюванням дуже чіткий сенс. Як сказав мені президент Йоганніс, ми можемо покладатись на Румунію. Румунія точно може покладатись на Україну. Ми разом значно посилимо наш регіон. Вже робимо критичний внесок у глобальну продовольчу безпеку завдяки співпраці в Дунайських портах і на сході Чорного моря. Буде більше співпраці. Розширюємо наші транспортні коридори. Буде більше робочих місць і економічних можливостей. Сьогодні підписали спільну заяву президентів, яка окреслює, як будемо далі ми рухатись. Третє. Вже незабаром відкриємо рух, нову гілку залізниці через Молдову, яка стане новим транспортним коридором. Разом з Молдовою ми рухаємось і до початку переговорів щодо членства в ЄС за повної підтримки Румунії. Я вдячний за це. В парламенті Румунії більшість за нас, уряд Румунії вже найближчими тижнями ми готуємо спільне засідання урядовців України та Румунії. Я вдячний пану президенту Йоганнісу і усьому румунському політичному класу та суспільству. Наші стратегічні відносини – це нова сила для усього Чорноморського регіону. Якщо вдасться реалізувати все те, що нами заплановано зараз, і над чим працюватимуть наші команди, у цій частині Європи з'явиться нове джерело економічного та безпекового розвитку. Я дякую всім, хто підтримує нас. Добре, що сьогодні змогли посилити нашу оборону. Слава Україні!
And
Heroem Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 594 of the war. And that is the end of the halftime show as well. And I'd say that now, and it seems like the question segment was more so the halftime show this time because we went right into Israel after that. But anyways, we are now going to be moving on into the second part of the stream, which is, funnily enough, the question segment. We get to answer all the questions that you all have asked, both in super chats and live chats as well. Really quickly, to reiterate how this segment works and also how this channel works in this segment, there are two ways that you can ask a question on this stream. One, you can ask a live chat. Asking a live chat is as simple as just typing it into the live chat. But you have to that means put the @ symbol in front of the name, Enforcer Matt, for him to be able to see the question and then gather it. If you do not put that on there, usually Matthew is not able to see the question to grab it. But there is a second way to have a question answered, which is through a super chat. Super chats are meant to support the channel. If you want to support Ukraine or a fundraiser that we're running support for that operates in Ukraine or in Israel, you can wait till Sunday, because that's when we run fundraisers. Beyond that, the support goes to running this channel and helping us to remain ad-free and sponsor-free like we always have been. So that way, instead of being harassed by an ad and having your daily killings sponsored by Flipbits or whatever companies out there sponsoring folks, you can just support the channel and help us to not stoop down to the level of having a sponsor for daily killings, which I honestly think is kind of a little degenerate. So that's largely what the super chats are for, but you can also attach a question to them as well. You can ask any question you want. You can ask anything about Israel. You can ask anything around the world. I might not have an answer for your question, but you can try and answer it, and I will give you the best attempt at answering it. But those are the two ways that you can ask a question on this channel. And to make it quite clear, super chats support this channel. Donations on Sundays support a nonprofit operating somewhere in the world, either in Israel or in Ukraine, in one form or another. And so with that, I hope that does clarify things, just in case we have new viewers tonight, fairly well. And with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so it's time for our final poll and question segment, and we have three really good polls to address. The first one says, U.S. Special Forces are currently on standby next to the Israeli border to rescue hostages, and will they go in? 54% said yes, they will have to eventually. 32% said probably, but only as a last resort. 10% said unsure, and 4% said no, the hostages will be released. And on this one, there seems to be no sign whatsoever of the Hamas terrorists using any type of logic, and that seems to be a trend with thugs. They don't like to use logic, nor do they like to negotiate, and they're going to play a hardline stance. That never really ends well for anyone, and it's not going to end well for Hamas either. I think the U.S. Special Forces are going to have to go in and teach them a lesson, get the hostages out, and that'll probably be how it ends. Now, obviously, that's going to carry with it some pretty big consequences, because that'll essentially be the U.S. entering the war, in my opinion. And I think it's going to carry some consequences from Iran, as well as some other countries as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with you entirely on your assessment. It's certainly going to cause escalations around the Middle East and the Far East, and I think that's going to be inevitable at this point. I still think it's entirely within Israel's right as well as America's right to organize a special forces, a special task force to go through enemy lines, the Hamas lines, and try and retrieve the terrorists. Not the terrorists, I'm sorry, the hostages. Catch me once, shame on you. Catch me twice. Look, you fool me once, you can't fool me again. But I would say that's something that we should do, in all honesty, is get a special task force put together to go and retrieve the hostages. And, of course,
They're there already.
Oh, good. I have to say
They were right on the border, man. They were waiting to go in. They're like ravaging dogs, man. They're like growling and honking and barking.
Man, they're at the Yad Mordecai checkpoint going, give me there. But anyways,
Come on, I want some action. I want some action. Come on, man.
also, I got to check this out. There's a 52nd Battalion memorial right there. What does this look like? So it's an IDF memorial. Huh. That's pretty cool. That's pretty neat. If anyone could share with extra details what that exact memorial is in this area for, I'd love to know, because I don't know which war this is supposed to be associated with, because there's been a lot of them. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least that poll. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next poll says, if the U.S. sends in troops to Israel, will Russia respond by sending troops to the Middle East as well? 46% said no, or Russia will not do that. 23% said yes, Russia will certainly do it. 22% said maybe, but it's still too early to tell. And 9% said unsure. And I just saw a post come out on Twitter just a moment ago. It's still very early to say for a concrete fact that Russia is directly involved in sparking this conflict, but the signs do seem to be pointing that direction. I saw an analyst, Trent Telenko, say on Twitter that apparently there are weaponry being found over there that are of Russian origin, or at least weapons that were manufactured in Russia, and they seem to be popping up in the area. So also I'm seeing here that apparently, let's see, apparently another post here I was looking at got deleted apparently, so we won't go off of that information. It must have been faulty from some other account. But it looks to me like Russia probably would send in troops if we did so, because they would take it as their opportunity to go in and try to counter the United States through basically a proxy war. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would say the Russians do have forces in the Middle East currently in Syria. So I think the real question would be, would they increase forces in Syria? I don't know, because it's not really like they have free combat level forces to just kind of move around at this point. Most of them are in Ukraine. So possibly, but it'll be an incredibly small growth of Russian forces in the Middle East, inside of Syria most likely. It'd probably be so small that it would almost be unnoticeable. Maybe a battalion or an extra 2 battalions. I just don't see it really being bigger than that right now. But who knows? I might be surprised, and they might send in a decent amount of forces into Syria. But with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. If something like that was to happen, where we move U.S. forces into Israel, I think the Russians would probably try and respond, but they won't really be able to respond shot for shot, par for par, because they don't really have that ability right now, at least fighting forces-wise. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one says, sources indicate that Israel had warning that Hamas planned to attack, but it was not addressed. And what are your thoughts? 39% said it's a leadership failure in Israel. 24% said it kind of seems a little suspicious. 23% said it's an intel failure, and 14% said unsure. And a lot of people are wanting to know the underlying question of why did Israel, which is one of the most fortified countries in the world, with one of the most renowned intelligence agencies in the world, how did they miss something as big as this? And it's starting to look like they didn't miss it. It looks like their intel community did pick up on it. There was apparently a report made about this attack coming, but the report never made it to the president or the prime minister or whoever, Netanyahu. And it looks like, yeah, prime minister. It looks like it didn't make it to him. So since it didn't make it to him, he never acted on it. That is the preliminary report right now, and that appears to be a leadership failure if that is actually what happened. So not a good thing whatsoever, and there must be some political reasons internally for that happening. So that'll have to be investigated. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd entirely agree with you. It's some kind of a leadership failure somewhere down the line that it didn't reach the prime minister. And I gotta say, we're starting to see a lot of problems like that lately. Many of y'all may remember that it was around last year, the whole balloon fiasco, where the U.S. Department of Defense didn't notify the president that there were balloons flying over the Midwest over strategic nuclear sites. not really like they could get any additional information that you can already get off of Google Maps. You know, at least from what we understand, the balloons didn't have any additional stuff on them, really, rather than for photography equipment and relay equipment on them. At least that's what we know. But that happened last year, and that was a massive outrage that the president was not informed of the balloons flying over the country until some random person was looking up the sky in Wyoming and went, "Hey, that's a big balloon up there," and then filmed it, and then it became a national outrage. Now we're hearing that something similar, but far more deadly in consequences, now happened in Israel as well. I would have to say this seems to almost be kind of a trend at this point in some Western countries, like the US and Israel, that things that would be considered important are being tuned out as background noise, and they're not making it to the very top of the chain of command. Obviously, they're not trying to mentally overload the leader of the country, because, you know, of course, that could happen in both situations. And the militaries are trying to figure out what's important to tell them, what's not important to tell them, and what's something we can just brush aside. And maybe they thought, Matthew, maybe the reason why they didn't take it to the prime minister is because they looked at it and they went, "Oh, yeah, Hamas is planning something every week. You know, so who cares? We're just going to throw it into the bin and it won't be that big of a deal because, you know, something like this is always coming up." And then this time it was a serious ordeal. That may have been...
Maybe so. Maybe so. I'm seeing some folks who are apparently in the know saying that the intel people kind of knew that because of the internal politics and internal strife going on inside of Israel before this attack occurred, that Netanyahu's focus was elsewhere. So he really didn't want to see something like this popping up that may or may not have actually happened in the end, because there's obviously a lot of intel reports that come out saying someone's going to attack pretty much all the time. But this one obviously looked a little bit more pressing, and they apparently chose not to show it to him because Netanyahu simply did not want to see it, and they knew that, and they withheld it.
Now, if that's the case, that is something that will be very damning to the Israeli government in the future and will probably create outrage nationally in Israel. But of course, I have to say this, Israel's politics are actually somewhat similar to most Western nations' politics, so I really can't go into that too much. But if that was the case, that may be a massive government oversight inside of Israel that will probably cause a lot of outrage publicly over what happened. Beyond that, however, can't really say much more because that would start to become a political issue, most likely if we went into Israeli politics. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and that was our last poll to cover. So, with that being said, of course, we are moving on to our Super Chat questions. And we have a lot of really good ones. And our first one up in the last segment goes to Michelle Esquera, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Michelle, very much for that support. And she says, "Jesus, UCSB, you are so freaking cool." And look at that. Michelle is a Jesus UCSB fan. And she says, please take a live chat question as well.
And Michelle, thank you so much for the support. And Jesus UCSB is pretty freaking cool. A tanker from Vilsec. Of course, Elite Spring Army tanker through and through. And I gotta say, Jesus has been an incredibly cool member of this community and also a very great and very supportive friend of ours. I gotta say, he's a very nice person, and I respect him greatly, especially for what he's done in his life. He's had a very storied and very successful life. And if my life could end up being as successful as Jesus UCSB's, I would consider it pretty damn good. And so with that, thank you so much, Michelle Esquire, for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And we will make sure to get a live chat. So with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And the live chat question goes to JHGRF, who says, do you think having too many carriers in a single place is a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that bad of an idea. In Vietnam, we usually had 3 to 4 aircraft carriers operating off the coast of Vietnam at any given time. So going off of that, hell, we could stack up 4 carriers in the Eastern Mediterranean. It's about the same zone of operation. Well, actually, Vietnam has a lot more coastline. But we were mostly operating in this area down here near South Vietnam. We didn't really go up into the Gulf. I believe this is the Gulf of Tonkin too much. Let me see. Come on, label it. Label it! It's not labeling it for me. I believe that's the Gulf of Tonkin, though. But we didn't really go up into the Gulf of Tonkin too much. The aircraft did, however, but the carriers didn't. But if we had largely the same operational area for the aircraft carriers in Vietnam, and we were able to get 3 to 4 of them in the area, I would say we could probably fit another carrier strike force in the area of the Eastern Mediterranean, and it'd still probably be okay. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least with a historical precedent on Vietnam. And with that, we are on to the next one. But thank you so much once again, Michelle, for the support and helping the channel to keep on rolling.
Indeed. And up next, big shout out to Willie Jefferson, who puts in a $20 donation. And there is no comment to address on this one, but Willie, big shout out to you for supporting the channel and helping to keep our whole operation running. And we do appreciate it very much. And hopefully, y'all are liking the combination of Israel news and also Ukraine news. And I think the Israel news must be covered. It's important to cover that as well, because at the moment, in my opinion, I think the Israeli conflict has a much greater chance of breaking out into a wider conflict than the Ukraine war does at the moment. Obviously, Ukraine is very important. We'll keep covering it always until the war is over. But the Israeli situation is getting very hot very quickly, and the Ukraine situation seems to be a little bit prolonged, but we still don't need to lose focus. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I'd have to say thank you for the support, Willie, and helping the channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support does mean a lot to us. It helps us to keep this thing rolling, helps us to pay rent, helps us to go to college, helps us do everything in the background that makes this possible to be a job. And thank God we don't have to run ads and we don't have to have sponsors on these streams to make that happen. That is something I've always been militantly against since the start of this channel, and I'll always stay that way. I think it's a lot better for people to decide that they want to support this channel and throw in support than for us to shove an ad in your face and give you really no option. That just seems pretty... That seems pretty messed up, you know? Like, when you think about it, like, I can't put this out there enough. Like, you sit there and you go, I wonder how many people have died today. And while I always make it all, you know, kind of not that bad, I always try and cover the news where it's not, like, emotionally overwhelming. At the same time, you click on someone's show, and then you hear, life is not everything. Try Rilosec or something like that. And it's like, wait a minute, we're sponsoring people dying? You know, it's like, that just seems messed up as hell. I mean, you know, that I can't put that out enough. To me, that's messed up. Like, to run ads on stuff like this, especially when we're showing clips of it, that doesn't really seem right to me. So we just shut off ads entirely. And thanks to folks like you, Willie, you help us to make sure that that is possible and to also keep doing this as a job. And it's something as a misnomer as well, that some people do YouTube for free. Nobody does YouTube for free. Everyone does it as a job. And that's something that I always find weird, is that people treat us differently because we are supported through super chats and we're not supported through, like, invisible ads and stuff like that. So with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping the channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Jay Bagwell, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jay, for that support.
Hey!
And also, thank you for sending me that evidence earlier as well. That was a huge help. And Jay says, long live the LSA. And the LSA is living long.
And thank you so much for the support, Jay, and helping the channel to keep on running. Folks like y'all help the Lee Spring Army to live long. Y'all help us to keep this channel running, and this is the home of the Lee Spring Army. I gotta thank you so much once again, Jay, for always being here with us since the start of this channel and supporting us through and through, not just as a viewer, but as a great friend. And I gotta thank you for being here with us again tonight. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Marion Deemer, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Marion, for that support as well. And she says, you guys rock and also make us proud. And thank you very much, Marion.
And thank you so much, Marion, for saying we make y'all proud. We try our best to make y'all proud with our decision-making on this channel, from what kind of fundraisers we run to how we run them, which is only through YouTube giving, and also how we receive support. We've always tried to be as transparent as possible on this channel, and we've always tried to make sure that our news reporting is about as accurate as it can possibly get, given the recency of the news that we're covering, which usually happens just an hour or two before the stream even begins. It means a lot to us that folks like you, Marion, have always been around forever and have continued to enjoy this channel and support it to help us to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $15 donation. She actually puts in 2 of them in a row, and huge shout out to you, Margaret, for that support.
Hey!
And she says, let me be a mum for a minute. A quote for both. Wisdom is sweet to your soul. If you find it, you have a bright future, and your hopes will not be cut short. I think you found it. And also, she said in the second one, just asking, Andrew, why don't you have a midday siesta between classes? And remember, you have the LSA behind you all the way. And is there any country that could be a mediator in the war in Ukraine?
And thank you so much for both super chats, Margaret. And to answer your first one, a quote, wisdom, and I got to thank you so much for that. I just quickly try to reread that, and then I remember the whole thing. I got to thank you so much for that. I hope that we try and be as upstanding and honest as possible. But one thing I got to say, and this is something that I think we can have no bones about, is that while we try and be as upright as possible, doing the right thing and stuff that we can, at the same time, we aren't going to take crap from people who act like they're going to, just roll us over and allow whatever the hell to happen. And that's something that a lot of people don't get at all. And a lot of people are very offended by when we sit there and say something like, no, we are not backing down on that because, we've been here. We know what's happened. And that's something that is very interesting to me, but something that we're not going to compromise on at all. Beyond this point, we don't really know what's going to happen. We don't really care what's going to happen. We're going to do the right thing for us. And of course, many of y'all heard the statement we made at the beginning of the stream today. From what we understand, that didn't just start happening yesterday. From what we were told, that's possibly been happening, I didn't get an exact time frame, for quite a while now, ever since we've been at school. And that's something that tells me that what we are doing is something we have to do. And it's something that confirms to me that's entirely backed up. And also, some people have been coming in, Matthew, I know you've seen them and asked them, saying, how do you know it's them? Because they said they were a part of their group. And also they said that. So we were like, all right, let's get it going. So with that, thank you so much for the first support, Margaret. And into the second one, why don't I have a midday siesta? That's a great question, Margaret. And the answer is I don't have time for midday siestas. If I had time for a midday siesta, I'd be very lucky. I think I only have time for that maybe one day of the week. And I think that day was today. And instead of doing that today, I was sitting in a police department filing out a report. So that was kind of the time I was going to be using for that. Didn't get to use it for that. So just kind of have to power through. Not to put you all through our schedule and do like a little tiny violin pity party thing here, but Matthew and me are up like 20 hours a day or more than that, 21 hours a day doing law school and this. We get up at like 5:40 in the morning. I get up at 5:40 in the morning almost every day, go to law school, stay there all day until 2, come home. By the time we get home, it's 3. Then we eat supper. By that time, it's 4. I get a shower, and then I start working. And then I work until 1 o'clock. And then I get off, and I go to sleep for a few hours, and then I wake up, and I do that all over again. That's just kind of how we do it. It's exhausting, yes. I've actually, Matthew, we don't like to get into the boo-hoos behind the scenes. We've actually burned out several times and just almost had our limits doing this, but I promised. The one thing that draws me a lot to doing this constantly is that I made a promise, and I'm not one to back down on promises ever. Whenever I make a promise, I go through with it. So that's why I rarely ever give promises. And when I do, you can bet your top dollar I will be making sure to carry through that promise. And so that's why I don't have midday siestas. But I also thank you so much for the support and saying that the LSA is behind us all the way. And if any country could be a mediator, it probably, hate to say it, considering what happened with Turkey earlier in the stream, it probably would still be Turkey. Switzerland has kind of done some stuff that is still neutral, but not really. So the Russians aren't really happy with them anymore, because when the Swiss break neutrality even slightly, it's a massive affront and offense to the whole world, because they're not doing their thing. But Turkey will probably still be the mediator in between Ukraine and Russia. While they have a very backwards idea on what's going on in Israel and Palestine, at the same time, they probably will be the ones that can broker a peace in between the Russians and the Ukrainians if anyone can. So with that, hope that does address that well. And thank you so much once again for the support, Margaret, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, I hope we answer both of those well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, I see some folks asking questions about the law enforcement action we've had to take as a result of people calling the law school and trying to harass us. We really can't get into specifics right now, because right now it is being investigated by both local police, and now the FBI has been notified as well. So we really can't get into it. But we can tell you that the law school was extremely shocked. They were aware of the situation. They have received phone calls, multiple phone calls apparently, from individuals associated most likely with Mercado, because he's made requests to people to call our law school and do this harassment. He's also made a request for people to call our Alabama State Bar as well and harass us there also. So, it's not too hard to connect the dots, even though some folks think that it's difficult to do. It's not that hard to do.
It's also not that hard to connect the dots when I tell the police officer the story of what happened, and then he's able to tell me exactly what these people have been saying verbatim, word for word, based off a phone call that came in the other day. There's not any other YouTube channel out there that says that stuff and then encourages their viewers to call up our school. That's the only one. So it's not really like it's ambiguous, like, oh, everyone's just saying the same crap about us. Who could it be? It could be anybody. No, it's that channel. I mean, that's what it is. You can't get around that, especially when they sit there and say on their Discord server to call up the bar, call up our law school, and do anything they can to try and ruin our lives. And they've been doing that for months now. Apparently.
And also, and even beyond that, what we don't talk about is he's also been targeting our family businesses as well. He's been soliciting people to go put fake reviews on our family businesses, and that is being handled as well in the background. So it's this community that he's created is essentially an online terrorist organization. That's essentially the way it's basically going to be handled at this point, and that's the way I believe the FBI is going to be investigating it.
Hopefully so. But we'll have to wait and see. We've been doing research in the background, and it appears promising, at least on our end in our defense. So we'll be waiting and seeing if anything develops from it. But beyond that, we can't really say a lot more. We've probably said too much as it is already. But I thank everyone once again for having our backs on this and actually knowing what's been going on. A lot of y'all have been around for so long. Y'all have kind of heard us make mention of what's been going on in the background over a very long amount of time and have been able to put together the pieces. Beyond that, however, I've got to thank everyone just for supporting us and having our backs once again, because y'all don't know what it's like. I don't. Some of y'all, unfortunately, probably do, but most of y'all probably don't know what it's like to sit down in a police department and then have someone say, "Yeah, actually, those calls have been made about you. People have actually been trying to have us take action against you on things that are blatant lies." That was actually very shocking to me, and was very angering. To think that people would be that sick to do something, and apparently for quite a while. It didn't just start yesterday. This has apparently been going on for a good bit from what I was told. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next super chat, we have a $10 donation from Lord Alathorn. And thank you very much, Lord Alathorn, for that support. And he said, will Hezbollah enter the conflict and draw Iran into the fray, as well as an opportunity to overwhelm Israel and then drawing the U.S. into the conflict?
Hezbollah probably will draw Iran into the conflict if it carries on in southern Lebanon the way it is. If they continue to escalate, I would put a pretty good assumption this will probably start to draw the Iranians in. We know that the Israelis will strike the Iranians if they can. That is something they will do in retaliation, and that will, of course, cause reprisals by the Iranians, which may create a conflict in the entire region. So based off of that, I hope that addresses that well, because it probably will become a region-wide conflict in the Middle East if Hezbollah continues to stay involved and, in fact, ramps up their operations. From what we've heard, the Iranian government has told them to back off, but we haven't seen them back off yet as far as actual combat action in the north has gone. And so with that, hope that does address that pretty well, and thank you once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Chi Town Rob 81, who puts in a $10 donation. And a big thanks to you for that support. And said in 2011, a single Israeli soldier was traded for 1,027 Palestinians and Arab criminals in a prisoner exchange. And based on the number of hostages Hamas has now, a trade is likely impossible.
Interesting. That's a pretty interesting statement there. Let me get that one. Let me get that one and read. A single was traded in Arab based on the number of hostages. Trades likely. You're probably right, Cheeton. I think you may be correct. And I'm, of course, just taking that number as it is. I'm not doing any research on that right now. But I would agree with you for the most part. I don't think the Israelis have that many Palestinians in their custody right now to even give up. So based off of that, I would have to agree with you. It's probably going to be impossible for a hostage exchange. So they probably will have to attempt a hostage recovery with the special forces. Who knows how that's going to go? They probably don't even know where these people are being held right now. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, helping the channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that fairly well, and also thank you for sharing that with me, because I didn't know what the actual asking price for one Israeli head was by the Palestinians, and, well, not the Palestinians, but by Hamas. But with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin, who says, making money from super chats, how dare you?
Well, thank you so much for the support. Putin will hang in the middle of the Kremlin, and thank you so much for helping out the channel. And I know, I mean, like, how dare us make a living like everyone else does on YouTube? That's just outrageous, especially the way we do it, where it's up front. You can literally see it. Every single bit of support that we get comes in, and you can physically see it. And we don't run ads and sponsors. How dare we run a channel like that? We should run it like shadow work in the background, where y'all don't really know what we're making doing this, and y'all have no say in it whatsoever. If you watch, you're just, you know, inadvertently paying for us to do this as a job. That right there, Putin will hang in the middle of Kremlin. That is low down. But still, thank you so much once again for support. Hope that does address that fairly well. And of course, I'm kidding. I think that's actually the best way to run this YouTube channel, especially considering the kind of news we cover. Crowdsourcing the funding instead of doing ads and sponsors is a lot better in my opinion. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Blue Flam 777 LSA, who puts in a 10 and says, the Brothers Enforcer, this is the business we've chosen. Should be y'all's mantra as lawyers. I'm just saying, LOL, and question to chat.
And thank you so much for the support. And this is the business. Did we say that, Matthew? Like, is he quoting us, or is that like a phrase from somewhere else?
I'm not even really sure, to be honest.
I don't know. For some reason, it's like it's not clicking in my head. I think we may have said that earlier. But we will probably make that our mantra. Hell, I gotta be honest with y'all. I've kind of been discouraged from running in politics because of how stupid people can be. Like, you know, you just don't. I have a very optimistic mindset when I went into this about what people would act like and what people would be like. And then you deal with people a lot, and then you find out, wow, I think there's really no way to change the situation right now, because that's just how, that's why it's this way. So, I don't know. I mean, you know, hopefully I still will, but maybe I'll have that as my mantra, being a lawyer or a politician, who knows? But still, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the live chat question goes to The Watcher, who says, show us a picture of the roof knockers.
Let's see here. Israeli roof knock. Let's see here. What does it look like? So knocks on the roof is a term used by the IDF to describe its practice of dropping non-explosive or low-yield devices on the roofs of targeted civilian homes. So sadly, I won't be able to show you a picture, because there are no pictures of these things. They're pretty much just dead bombs that they're dropping before they drop the real one. So you hear the punk of the bomb on the roof, and then you go, oh crap, in 5 minutes, this place is going to get bombed, run. And then you run out of the building, and then they bomb it. So sadly, I can't show y'all the knockers. I would love to show y'all the knockers, but sadly, it's a family show, y'all. But still, thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat, Blue Flame. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Mr. White, who puts in a 5 and says, why not get help from the one GeoGuessr streamers to help identify the locations in the Locations Unknown segment?
That's a good question. Why don't we? It probably would take too much time, because when we come home, I start actually putting together the geolocations around 6, and that ends around, I believe, 8. And then I work on thumbnails and intros and everything beyond that point all the way up till 9. And then also get coffee and drink that too. So I actually wouldn't have time to do that, because I'd have to send the clips to them before I put them on the map. And then they'd have to geolocate it, which who knows how long that would take, or if they're even available at that time. And then they'd have to send all of them back with all of their little GPS coordinates. And then I'd have to try and go through and input those. Largely eyeballing it is fairly accurate right now. So I think we could sacrifice a little bit of accuracy, like we always have at this point, to save time, because otherwise it probably would be impossible to have all of them geolocated anyways before the stream starts. But with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Levesque Jean-Francois, who puts in a 5 and says, for the Ukraine soldiers, and please consider, let's see here. Now, on that one, we are sadly not negotiable on that. We've already tried that avenue, and that avenue is dead shut. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would thank you so much for the support. If I know what Matthew's talking about, is it what I think you're talking about, Matthew?
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Sadly, we have tried everything at this point. We've been trying for a year. Nothing's ever worked. So we're not going down that route anymore. It's just pointless. Unless if we just want to let the guy off the hook so that way he can continue to harass us and stalk us. That's something I'm not really a big fan of. So thank you for the support, and thank you for helping the channel to keep on running. And I understand that you're well-intentioned asking something like that, but still, I hope you understand, based off of what we found out today, which we had to file a police report on because it was so serious, we don't really feel like negotiating with someone like that anymore, who does things like that. That just seems a little silly. But with that, thank you once again for the support, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Bartimeus Carbulo, who puts in a 5 and says, "Hey, enforcers, this is happening to you guys." I think he meant to say, "I'm sorry this is happening to you guys." And he says, "Please stay safe and also, take care of yourself," and all that good stuff, if you know what I mean. Don't always agree with you and wish you the best.
And thank you for the support. Hey, it's fine that you disagree with me. I just say that people do it civilly. I disagree with people civilly. Like I disagreed with the last super chat civilly. I just wish people would do that because let me be unfiltered here. People will come in and like with Ukraine, will say something and they'll be like, "That's a batshit stupid idea, you damn idiot." And it's like, do you expect me to sit there and just listen to that crap? Like, no, I wouldn't expect that person to stick around if I talk to them like that. So they get booted, and then they want to be offended that we didn't allow them to be rude on our show. It's like, live with it. Become respectable. Become a nice person or polite or something. You don't belong on this channel. And so I thank you for the support in backing us up in that because, I don't stand for that stuff. I don't let people punk us or treat us like crap and then just go along with it. No, we're not into that. And I'm not into other people acting like they can be treated like that and that be fine. That's not fine. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on into the next one.
And the next one goes to Dark Warrior 137, who says, "Not sure why people are so against you getting super chats. It's better than interrupting the news with ads, and ads are already superimposing on YouTube."
And
I don't understand the super chat thing either, to be honest with you, Dark Warrior, but, people will create controversy out of anything.
And I thank you for the support, Dark Warrior, and helping the channel to keep on running. And I don't get it either. And also, it seems as though a certain group, you all know who we're talking about, loves to take the idea of us receiving super chats, and you all know the division very well in between super chats and Sunday fundraisers and where donations go. They're two entirely separate revenue streams that your support goes down towards a nonprofit or towards us. It's very clearly defined on this channel every time you come on. And I don't understand why people want to try and go out of their way to try and confuse people on the two or make it sound like we are trying to confuse the two. We have made it clear since this channel was founded and we were monetized for super chats where your support goes. It's the clearest that it's ever been anywhere on the internet. We don't sit there and say, give us all of your money. We don't run YouTube giving fundraisers and then we're going to give a percentage to somewhere. We don't do stuff like that because how in the world do y'all actually know what percentage is going anywhere unless if I throw out a spreadsheet? And then that gets into accounting and you can screw that up easily, then get into massive trouble. It's a lot easier to run it through YouTube, so that way YouTube can do all of the accounting. And if anyone screws anything up and gets in trouble, it's going to be YouTube, not me. And also, they're not going to do that because they could get sued for their shirts, and obviously they want to avoid that as well. And then with Super Chats, it's like, obviously, ads and sponsors on this kind of stuff, largely, in my opinion, pretty tacky. If you do it on video, can get away with that if you're not showing actual war footage. We've done that a couple of times, I think maybe twice over the channel's history. But beyond that, I don't like the idea of it. And I thank you so much, Dark Warrior, for backing up the idea. Super chats aren't bad because it makes sure that you avoid ads. You can just hop in here free of pressure and not even support the channel, and other folks who support the channel make sure that everyone has it ad free. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a $2 super chat from Mark Gagne, who says, "No ads is the best," and he also says, "Is World War III around the corner?"
World War III might be around the corner. Maybe. I mean, it's starting to look like it to me even, and I'm a big skeptic on stuff like that. And thank you for saying no ads is best, Mark, because I agree, no ads is truly the best. And so with that, thank you so much once again. Hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and we also have a $5 super chat from Bob Dole. And good to see you, Bob. He says, When you guys become lawyers, can I be one of your clients? I got a speeding ticket, man. I need you guys to take care of it for me. And maybe one day, that sounds like a beginner case. That sounds like something I could handle. So sure, Bob Dole, that you're a very high-profile client. A lot of publicity too. So sure, I'll handle Bob Dole's speeding ticket one day.
And thank you so much once again for the support, Bob. And maybe I will get your speeding ticket in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Guamson Cruz, who says, "Sic vis pacem parabellum." No mercy to terrorists.
And thank you so much for the support. And I would agree, no mercy to terrorists. I don't think there should be. Still, I'm going to say this, though. Still can't go and kill innocent civilians. That's something that needs to generally be discouraged by everyone, because that's just inhumane. But beyond that, to the actual terrorists themselves, there should be no mercy to terrorism at all. Anywhere, wherever it may be, wherever you may find it, no mercy. It needs to be crushed. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our last super chat goes to Madison Music Teacher, who puts in a 2 and says, "How did they take out the Hamas government? With plenty of American firepower."
With a lot of high explosives and a months-long ground campaign, they will probably just wipe out Hamas naturally. But I don't really know, because they are kind of like they are a terrorist organization that kind of uses guerrilla tactics. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they'll just roll through and the Hamas will survive. I'm hoping they figure out how to actually take them out, though, because if the Mossad could track down people, Nazis, in the 50s and 60s and kill them wherever they were in the world, I have a feeling that they could probably figure out who in the world's leading Hamas and end up executing them as well if they need to, kind of like how we did with bin Laden. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on from there, we have a $5 super chat from GOD420, who says, "GOD420 blesses ad-free." And I have to say, I agree with you 100%. I do like having no ads on the stream because it does not interrupt things. And also, thank you very much for that support. And with that being said, we are moving on to our live chat questions. And obviously, up first, we have to go to our Morse code decoders of the stream. We have Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Benu, Paul Schultz, Ty Lines also, Kevin J, and also Rumpelstiltskin. They said tonight's Morse reads, "The Western world will stand strong against any threat, any foe, and long live the LSA, Slav Ukraine, and Slav Israel."
And that's the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. Y'all just hit the jackpot. That is the Morse code message of the night, and we will stand with any nation around the world that is in the right. The Lee Spring Army is transforming a little bit from just a pro-Ukraine group to a pro-right group. Not just Ukraine, but the rest of the world. Pro-Israel, pro-South Korea, pro-Taiwan. Anyone who's around the world that's being attacked by an evil country, we are going to back up. And so with that, thank y'all for deciphering the Morse code message. And we were going to go into live chats, but we have 2 more super chats. After this, though, we're going to read off these 2 super chats, but we're going to have to put a cutoff beyond these 2. We will not be able to read super chats that come in beyond this point, because we always want to make sure to answer live chats, because the channel is free to watch, and you can ask questions for free. You do not have to pay to have a question answered. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this live chat question goes to Jesus UCSB, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Jesus, for that support. It says, "LSA Army, I'm so proud of all of you. LSA for life, homie." Hey! Or it's in Halloween time. And my favorite movie is Friday the 13th. LSA, LSA.
And thank you so much once again for the support, Jesus UCSB, and LSA for life, and also LSA forever. And also, my favorite movie for Halloween would be... You know, we didn't really watch Halloween movies growing up, did we, Matthew?
I don't think so.
I don't think so, yeah. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe Gremlins? I think that's the closest we can get, but that's a Christmas movie. But Gremlins is kind of Halloween-ish. So, Gremlins, I'll throw Gremlins in the Halloween category just for now. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Jesus. I hope that does address that fairly well. And long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the final super chat. Of course, cut off after this one. We won't be able to answer any more beyond it, and then we're going to be getting into live chats.
And this one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a 15 Australian and says, "I thought my super chat went through, but here's another one. Take a live chat question."
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Margaret, and we will take a live chat. So with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and in honor of Margaret's super chat, we are moving back into the live chat questions. And up first, we have one from Barry Woodward, who says, "Why is the U.S. sending 2 carrier groups to the Middle East?" Please comment.
The U.S. is sending 2 carrier groups to the Middle East because tensions in Israel, things got bad, people died, U.S. Citizens have been taken hostage. Big deal, U.S. sends forces into area. And so with that, I hope that explains that fairly well. I don't know why I explained that like a caveman, but I think it was for time reasons. But still, hope that does answer the question. Thank you so much once again, Margaret, for the support and sponsoring that live chat. And with that, due sadly to time constraints, we are only going to be able to get to 4 live chat questions, but we will get to 4. And so with that, we are on to the first one.
And this one goes to Seba, who says, "How long before the U.S. has boots on the ground?"
Well, I think we actually already have some kind of a special forces group maybe in the area. I'm not really sure on that though, Matthew. Do we?
Yeah, we have special forces surrounding Israel and the surrounding countries.
So we do have forces there in the area. It's just that they're not in Israel at the time. So I don't know when they're going to be in Israel, but we got some in the surrounding nations like Jordan, I believe. But with that, hope that does address that well. And we are on to the third to last one.
This one goes to Eagle, who says, "Do you have any info on the infrastructure damage with Estonia and Finland?" And Eagle, I will say I do have some information on it. I don't think the Enforcer has information unless you do, Enforcer.
The pipeline.
You do?
Yeah, the pipeline that connects Finland and Estonia was ruptured, and it appears that according to investigators, it was ruptured so heavily and so well that it clearly could not have been an accident. It must have been some kind of a deliberate act by some vessel that may have been towing some kind of an anchor or a chain along the ocean floor that just cut a gash open in this pipe. That's what I've heard, but is that what you've heard, Matthew?
So I've heard that that was a bit of a rumor that is really unsubstantiated at the moment. It sounds to me like maybe it was simply a unfortunate accident that happens to coincide with some Russian fears, and there doesn't seem to be a consensus right now as to what exactly happened, but no conclusive evidence to say that Russia sabotaged it directly.
Interesting. Well, I hope that answers the question, because apparently we both heard different stories. One of them's right. I have a feeling it actually probably isn't mine, because Matthew sounds more innocent. That's usually the actual story. But who knows? It was a Russian vessel, I believe, that may be to blame either way. So whether it be incident or not, the Russians are still responsible. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And were we on the second to last or the last question?
This is the second to last. This one goes to Andrew, who says, "Wouldn't it be better to carry 900 drones or more instead of 90 aircraft?"
90 drones would be nice, but 90 aircraft can carry a lot more than the drones can, and also can do a little bit more. Drones can't do anti-radiation work or anti-surface-to-air missile battery work. The aircraft can. So while drones are great, and certainly adding a new dimension to the battlefield, they still aren't on par with what an aircraft can do at this moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Anthony Riley, who says, "Why doesn't the U.S. send a carrier strike group to help Ukraine, given that Israel is not part of NATO either?"
Israel has a long-standing and very friendly relationship with the Western world. It's also a strategically important area in the Middle East, at least for the United States. So that's why we can send carrier groups there. Also, the Palestinians are not a nuclear-armed rival of the United States. They're largely just kind of like run by terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. So we can kind of pull our weight around there without having to worry of a nuclear onslaught happening because of it. So that's why we don't send carrier task groups or carrier strike groups into the Black Sea, and we send them towards Israel in the Eastern Mediterranean instead. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream. I have to thank everyone so much once again for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure running the stream for all of y'all tonight. 7,000 of y'all were watching the stream at the peak. Over the length of it, 30,000 of y'all have been on the stream. We are entirely honored and always will be honored to be able to cover the news for each and every one of y'all, not just on the war in Ukraine, but situations now evolving around the entire world. We hope that y'all continue to stay with us and make sure to watch us as y'all's news, not just in Ukraine, but also around the world. And we also thank you all so much once again for watching. Many of y'all say that y'all are very happy to be on this channel, watching the news here. I have to counter that by saying I'm incredibly honored that we are able to to cover the news for y'all. If y'all have enjoyed tonight, please make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. It, of course, helps us out greatly and also makes us really happy when we see that folks have subscribed to the channel and continue to enjoy our work. We run these streams 6 days a week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time every single night, covering the past 24 hours of news around the world, except for Mondays. We take Mondays off. Every other day, you can always count on us to be here at the exact same time every night covering the news. You can also check out our short war summaries. We haven't really been able to make a lot of them lately due to situations going on in the background, which we've talked about recently in the stream. But we are, of course, continuing to try and get those out and put out shorter summaries that y'all can watch without having to watch 3 whole hours of stream. But still, with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe. Slava Ukraini, God bless Israel, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks. We'll see you all tomorrow. Thank you all for another great stream. And of course, Slava Ukraine and God bless Israel.
The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.